Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Became the Green Shadow? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. The afternoon sun bathed Mizudafu in a warm, gentle light. The streets were alive with children playing with their first quirks. A spark here, a small jet of water there, proud smiles on their parents' faces. Izuku Midoriya watched everything with wide, enthusiastic eyes. Every display left him breathless. "Mom, look, that kid's making fire," he exclaimed, bouncing next to Inko. She stroked his head, smiling with a sweetness that barely masked the anxiety tightening her stomach. "Yes, sweetie, he's really good, isn't he?" Today was the day of the checkup. The day they'd check his x-rays and hopefully tell him when his quirk would appear. Izuku clutched his well-worn All Might plush. He had rehearsed the question he would ask the doctor 1,000 times in his head. "What kind of quirk will I have?" He couldn't wait. The clinic's waiting room was decorated with hero posters and bright colors. Izuku watched the other children with innocent, admiring curiosity. He saw a girl with tiny wings. Another had skin as hard as polished stone. Izuku clapped his hands, thrilled. "They're amazing, Mom." "They really are," Inko replied, though her voice betrayed a slight tremor. When the doctor called their name, Izuku jumped off the chair with innocent excitement. The office was cold, almost too white. The sound of the X-ray machine echoed as Izuku curiously watched it scan his foot. The doctor studied the images in silence too long. Inko stiffened. Finally, he turned to them. His eyes were kind, but his voice was far too serious. "Mrs. Midoriya, I'm afraid there's a problem." Izuku tilted his head, confused, while Inko stopped breathing. "You see, children who develop quirks lose a joint in their big toe. It's a characteristic sign, and Izuku still has it." The woman blinked. "So, what does that mean?" Izuku clutched the plush tighter, waiting for the answer like one waits for the end of a story. The doctor took a deep breath. "Your son will not develop a quirk." Absolute silence. Paralyzing silence. Izuku smiled. A hollow, sad, stunned smile. As if those words couldn't possibly apply to him. "I won't have a quirk?" he whispered. The doctor shook his head slowly. Inko brought a trembling hand to her mouth. "Izuku, I'm so sorry." He lowered his gaze, shoulders slumped. He didn't fully understand what it meant. He only knew it hurt. A lot. The walk home felt longer than usual. Izuku moved slowly, the All Might plush clutched almost painfully. His small hand trembled not with anger, but with confusion and fear. "Mom," he murmured without looking up. "Does this mean I can't become a hero?" Inko swallowed. A simple no would have been like stabbing him in the heart. She tried to smile, but her lips shook. "Sweetie, you can always try. But it might be very hard." Her word hard pierced Izuku's chest like a sharp blade. He nodded, tears welling in his eyes, desperately trying to hold them back. "I really want to be a hero. I really do." "I know, Izuku. I know." Inko pulled him into a hug. She held him tight, so tight that her arms shook. Izuku began to cry. Tightly, controlled. Like a child who doesn't want to worry her. Tears streamed silently down his cheeks, full of pure pain. "Why? Why me?" His voice was a broken thread. Inko didn't know what to say. There was no right answer. The house was steeped in heavy silence. Izuku walked to his room without a word, still clutching the All Might plush too tightly. Inko watched him go, her heart tight with a pain only a mother could feel. Izuku sat at his desk. He didn't want to cry, not yet. It was as if his brain was still trying to make sense of what had happened. He turned on the computer. His favorite video played automatically, as always. All Might beamed at the camera, radiant and invincible. "You too can become a hero." Izuku stared at the screen as if searching for an answer within that smile. His eyes slowly filled with tears. He wiped his face with his sleeve. "Mom," he whispered, voice trembling. Inko knelt beside him. "Tell me, sweetheart." Izuku turned to her, cheeks wet. Can I still become a hero? Even without a quirk? There was no arrogance, no stubbornness, only a small, fragile hope, almost childlike. Inko's lips trembled. She wanted to say yes. She wished with all her heart she could. But the truth weighed like a boulder. Tears slid down her cheeks. Izuku, I'm so sorry. I really am. She held him tight, as if she could protect him from a cruel world. Izuku sobbed against her chest. It wasn't a scream, it wasn't frustration. It was the pure, broken sadness of a child whose dream had just cracked for the first. After that day, hell for Midoriya was about to begin. The news that Izuku Midoriya was quirkless spread like wildfire throughout the school. Upon arriving at school, Izuku saw everyone using their quirks while he walked with his head down so as not to be noticed. But that's quirkless. What a shame. He shouldn't be here, he's a social outcast. Izuku tried to ignore them hoping that everything would pass, but suddenly someone threw his backpack making him fall to the ground. The worst thing for Izuku was seeing who had done it, the one he considered his best friend Katsuki Bakugo. Get out of the way, you nobody. Those words hurt Izuku who couldn't understand his friend, B.KK Kaken Wi, with tears in his eyes. Don't call me that we're not friends, you're a nobody, go away Deku, don't ever get in my way again. With that Bakugo walked away, leaving behind a crying green-haired boy. Years passed but things didn't change, on the contrary, they got worse. The bullying grew stronger every day, and inside Midoriya Izuku, his trust in the world diminished every day. Another day in that hell in Aldera. Izuku thought, getting out of bed, he was now 11 years old. As he pulled off the covers he saw all his wounds and scars that took him back to all the years of bullying and humiliation he had suffered. Let's hope Kaken and the others won't torment me today. While thinking, he heard a knock on the door. Izuku, breakfast is ready. To avoid worrying her, Izuku replied, Okay mom, I'll brush my teeth and be right there. Okay, honey, I'll wait for you at the table. As he heard his mother leave, Izuku began to hyperventilate and began to imagine all the abuse he'd suffered, hearing the voices of those who humiliated him. You're a nobody. If you didn't exist, you would have done a world of good. No one will want a reject like you anyway. As he heard these voices, he began to run to the drawers to grab the medicine the doctors had given him to help him with these panic attacks. After he washed them down with some water, the voices began to fade and he calmed down. He began to get dressed, paying attention to his still fresh wounds from the day before. After getting dressed, he went to the bathroom to brush his teeth. After applying toothpaste, he began brushing slowly so as not to feel too much pain from his chipped and damaged teeth, damaged by the punches and kicks he'd received over the years. The voices returned to him, forcing him to take more pills to calm himself down. Finally, after calming down, he managed to brush his teeth and headed for the living room for breakfast. Inko was waiting for him, and as she saw him arrive, her heart sank as she saw her little boy suffering so much, never confiding in her. After breakfast, Inko walked her son to the door and asked, Did you get everything, darling? Yes, Mom, I have to hurry so I don't arrive late. Okay, be careful please. I don't want to see you suffer so much again, Inko urged him, hugging him. Don't worry, nothing will happen. I love you. See you later. I love you too, darling. See you later. With tears in her eyes. As Izuku ran toward the bus, hoping for a better day, he was knocked over by someone, and when he got up to see who it was, he noticed it was none other than his former friend and now his biggest bully. Katsuki Bakugo and his classmates. Hey Deku, where were you running so fast? Come play with us for a bit. The blonde boy asked with a mocking smile and a cold look. And no, Kaken, please, Midoriya muttered before being dragged away. He was taken to an alley where they began to beat him and use him as a punching bag. Imari and another boy held him down while Bakugo enjoyed kicking and punching him all over his body. When they dropped him, Midoriya was on the verge of fainting. Seeing this, Bakugo grabbed him by the hair, lifting his face. See, Deku, this is because you keep having that stupid desire to become a hero, but you have no chance. You're worthless. So remember, stop this stupid dream and kill yourself so you can give everyone a gift. This sentence shattered Izuku, as he heard everyone laughing as they left after stealing the money that had fallen from his pockets. "See you at school, Deku, let's play scrap again," Bakugo said, turning as he was leaving to see the green-haired boy writhing in pain. Midoriya arrived an hour late to school, limping due to his injuries. He immediately headed to class, trying his best to avoid the other students' gazes. When he arrived, everyone started laughing, seeing him in pain, including the teacher, who scolded him for being late and gave him detention. After class and recess began, Midoriya looked around at all his classmates laughing and joking with each other. Noticing that many were joking about him, his head began to throb with the sounds of teasing and taunting. He tried to run out of the classroom to escape the situation, but was stopped at the door by the explosive blonde. "Hey, Deku, where do you think you're going without us?" "Please, Kaken, let me go to the bathroom," Izuku begged. "Relax, Deku will walk you," Bakugo taunted. Once they reached the bathroom, Bakugo's group took Deku to a stall and began sticking his head in the toilet until they could barely hear him breathing. Then they pulled his head out, letting him catch his breath a little, and then they started doing the same thing again. They did this for about 10 minutes. In the end, they left the green-haired boy there, tired and hungry. "Why did I do this to deserve this? This world is unfair, it seems," Izuku thought on the floor as he cried and despaired over the abuse he had suffered. He began to hear voices, and this time, these voices also began to take the form of those who were humiliating him. Unable to stay there any longer, Izuku ran as far away from that hell of a middle school as possible. After an hour of running, he reached an alley where he threw himself on the ground and cried. It can't get any worse, Midoriya thought, praying for a better future. But what the boy didn't know was that fate had more suffering in store for him that day. And perhaps, indeed, very likely, after what happens, he will never be the same again. This is the day Izuku Midoriya completely stopped believing in heroes and the world. This is the day the fragile boy that was Izuku Midoriya died. After a morning filled with torment from Bakugo and his friends, Izuku now thought he had already faced all that day. But that's not the case. The day for the green-haired boy had just begun. Walking down the alley where he had gone to take refuge, new feelings he had never felt before began to pour into his heart, pure hatred towards all the people who have continued to torture him since he discovered he was without any quirks. Those BSers think they're better than me just because they have a weirdness. One day I'll make them pay for everything I promise. These thoughts began to assail Midoriya, who was unsure whether to let go of this new feeling or continue fighting to remain the boy he had always been and continue his dream of becoming a great hero. As he had these conflicting thoughts, he began to flinch again. Another time his panic attacks had gotten the better of him another time. But they weren't like his usual panic attacks where he heard voices, or felt like he saw the faces of his bullies. No, this time I think of an episode that was too traumatic for him and it felt like being catapulted into his memories, as he clutched his head tightly to try to get back to reality and not relive that cursed memory. Deku, don't make that face, we're just having fun with you in the end, you should be grateful we're including you. A 9-year-old Bakugo laughed as they continued to torture a small green-haired boy tied to a chair. "I beg you Kaken, I won't get in the way anymore but let me was interrupted by a full power punch in the face. "Shut up, never let yourself think about putting yourself on the same level as me again by saying that you will become a hero. Nullity, the only one who will become a hero here will be me, you will only be a spectator. Now with this punishment you will learn the lesson to put yourself against me, you useless scum," said Bakugo laughing. "Deku, shut up and take it, maybe we'll just use you for fun and not leave you dying." Darai's Imari then turned his attention to Bakugo as he approached Midoriya. "How about that in addition to threatening him, we also destroy him psychologically, doing something to him that he will never forget, a mark on his skin, here on his chest so that he never forgets his place every time he takes off his shirt." He laughed Imari as he pointed to Midoriya's chest. "I beg you, let me go, I don't want to please," Izuku cried, but in response he received only further derision. "Bakugo, I ignore him. You're right, Imari, so he'll always remember what he is. Pick up the phone and pick up while I teach this nobody his place." "And no Kaken, leave me." His protests were useless, they only increased the anger of the bullies. Midoriya Izuku was tied to a chair as he watched, awaiting his fate. "Now I'll take care of you, Deku," Bakugo spat out angrily. "Pass me a knife so we can brand this son of a beach for life." Hearing this phrase, Midoriya began to feel his fear increase second by second as he saw a boy in the group pull out a knife and pass it to Bakugo. Bakugo approached him and said, "Now Deku is calm, we have to do it so you will learn your place forever. I warned you but you didn't listen to me." He laughed Bakugo and kept making fun of the green-haired boy. "If you look at me with this scared look you almost turn me on, I want to hear your screams." Midoriya was petrified with fear. His brain couldn't connect anything. "No, they can't really do that. It's impossible they wouldn't get this far," he thought desperately, but soon after he was pulled out of his thoughts as Bakugo approached menacingly and took off his shirt and started laughing out loud at the sight of the boy's fear. "Oh yes, so I want to see you good. The fear I see in your eyes I want more. Now scream, you son of a beach," he shouted Bakugo as he began writing, digging the word t with the knife on Midoriya Izuku's chest. Each letter was written by sinking the knife into the flesh. For each letter Midoriya screamed louder and louder in despair until he had almost no voice. "Stop please, it hurts. Stop, stop, I ward you off." They were all useless and screams. He was branded without remorse by his bullies and he noticed that. With each scream the boys and Bakugo laughed more and more at seeing the suffering and despair of the green-haired boy. Having finished writing the sentence and seeing Midoriya in tears without a voice, the boys began to hit him in the face in turn between punches and kicks. Every single second for Midoriya seemed like an eternal and infinite torture. With the excruciating pain he felt for the mark he had received on his chest, the punches and kicks he was receiving in the face did not even tickle him. This torture went on for what seemed like a lifetime to Midoriya, but in reality it lasted 30 minutes amid laughter and ridicule, videos and photos from the boys of him being humiliated and beaten. Eventually the boys decided to leave, bored of torturing the green-haired boy, and decided to untie him. "Deku, now you will forever remember that you must never get in my way again. Today we let you go, but remember that next time you could end up reduced even worse." Bakugo's words were spat out in a sadistic way. Deciding that he still wanted to make that boy suffer again, he decided to show the green-haired boy the video while he was being branded. He picked up a phone and confronted it with a panting, wounded Midoriya crawling on the ground. Seeing those images were making poor Midoriya vomit up, and he didn't even have the strength to react, so he was forced to endure all that without being able to do anything to defend himself. "If only I had the power to defend myself, I would make everyone pay for it, in this or the next life, I swear. I will make you pay for it." These thoughts continued to blend in his head as he was forced to watch that video. "Look here, what a great video that came out. You hear how you scream while I mark your name on your chest, Deku. I really think I'll striptease to this video at home tonight. See you at school, discard." After these words Bakugo began to laugh and walk towards the exit with the rest of the group, leaving the green-haired boy crawling on the ground in his tears and blood. Midoriya Izuku, for his part, was devastated. He couldn't understand why all this had happened to him. He had been humiliated, beaten, and even branded for life with a knife with a name that meant useless. He only had a hint of voice after the abuse he had suffered, and I tried to ask for help, but what came out was just a barely whispered from his lips. Help, I need help," after which he passed out. Deku recovered from his memories, with tears in his eyes, immediately lifted his t-shirt, and I immediately felt excruciating pain when he saw that wound. While his nickname, Deku, had been branded for life by his bullies and he had started punching himself in the head to try to forget the excruciating torture he had endured, it now seemed that as time went on his mental health was falling apart. All the torture and humiliation he had suffered was destroying him, letting go of the kind boy he once was. And when he thought nothing could be worse for him that day after he was bullied in the morning, and now he had just remembered one of the greatest humiliations he had suffered, and now he started to feel something moving to his left. He immediately looked up to his left, however. He saw something he hoped he would never have to meet. A real villain. He was made entirely of slime. Just as soon as he turned around that the villain began to expand and become bigger and bigger. Midoriya didn't even have time to think of anything to escape, which was instantly attacked and trapped by the villain slime. "I would have hoped for someone with a better body, but for now I will settle for this body here, at least to survive," until I find a better one with more authority to rob another bank. So until then you will be my body, the villain exclaimed menacingly. Izuku began to be suffocated as the slime entered his mouth, the villain by now having decided to use his body with or without his will. Midoriya tried desperately to free herself, however she first tried to kick, then, she decided to try to remove the slime from her mouth using her hands, but there was nothing she could do, it was all useless, and as time passed she felt her breath fail and began to surrender to death. So that's how my useless existence will end. I won't even be able to be a little brave at the moment of my death, and I won't even be able to take revenge on those assholes who tortured and persecuted me from the age of 4. He desperately thought, now certain that no one would come to save him. But just as he was abandoning himself to death, suddenly a bang catapulted him out of the villain's slimy body. Don't be afraid, boy. Because now I'm here. Izuku, now freed from the villain, heard his voice and suddenly stood up, turning around, unable to believe what he was seeing with his own eyes. Near him, in the flesh, was the symbol of peace. All Might. All Might? All Might. Izuku screamed in joy at seeing his favorite hero there. Maybe this shitty day could be improved. Maybe if I ask him if I can become a hero even without a quirk he will help me. I'm sure he is ultimately the symbol of peace. If there is still something good in this world I will find out by asking him, Izuku thought hopefully, but before he could speak he was overwhelmed by the voice of the peace symbol. Hi, young man. Isn't IT school day? How are you? All Might asked in his exaggerated voice immediately after locking the slime villain in 2 bottles. Midoriya was still lost in thought and didn't know what to say. He had just come out of memories of his past only to be attacked soon after by a villain, and now his idol was facing him, who had just saved him from certain death. It was a strange day for him. He didn't know whether to burst out laughing or cry. He knew he should ask him that question, but first he had to answer his idol's questions. I am Midoriya. CC, can I have your autograph please? Midoriya asked, handing All Might his notebook. Sure, young, give me here, said All Might as he picked up and signed the boy's notebook. Midoriya then resumed his notebook. I will keep it forever thanks to All Might, he proclaimed by bowing several times to thank him. As soon as the initial enthusiasm died down, Midoriya remembered the question he had to ask his idol. It was a question that had been swirling around in his head for too long, and he had never had the opportunity to ask a hero, let alone All Might in fact. He couldn't miss such an opportunity. He wanted to know if his existence was of any use or not, so he took courage and asked him, All Might, there's something I wanted to ask you that's been bothering me since I was 4. Certainly, young. Ask me, what's your question? The peace symbol answered, waiting for the boy's question. Midoriya took some deep breaths before asking All Might the question, finally taking courage and asking him, I was born without quirk. For years because of this flaw of mine I was teased by everyone, but I never stopped dreaming of becoming a hero, of becoming like you. So I wanted to ask you, can a boy like me without quirk ever become a hero? A few seconds passed before All Might responded, but those seconds seemed like hours for Midoriya. But the peace symbol's first response was a deep breath, a sign that the green-haired boy would not like the answer. Finally All Might responded in a serious voice, Listen, young man. I am grateful to you and I am happy that you admire me so much, even dream of becoming like me. But I'm not just a symbol feared by bad guys. But I am also a hero, and my duty as a hero is to defend justice, citizens, but above all truth and honesty. Midoriya began to feel the world collapse behind him, having already guessed his answer. So I honestly think that instead of trying to become a hero you should try to become a police officer. After all, they too, even if overshadowed by us heroes, take care of the safety and health of the citizens, and it would still be a great achievement. That response I begin to completely destroy the young boy's dreams. But don't finish there. While I respect your dream of becoming a hero like us, I cannot allow you to harm yourself for an unattainable dream. I understand that this is not the answer you would have hoped for, but I can't afford to fool you into thinking that you would only risk getting killed. Hearing those words made the green-haired boy sink even deeper. Now not only did his schoolmates torture and humiliate him every day, but now his dream of becoming a hero has also been shattered, not by just any hero but by his idol himself. Sorry boy, not all of us are meant to be heroes. I hope you understand. Now I have to go, by young man. Remember to always root for me, All Might said as he jumped to leave, looking away in shame at having destroyed the boy's dream, leaving a broken boy there, at the mercy of his thoughts. As All Might left, Izuku could only stand there as he watched his idol, who had just disintegrated his dream, leave. Making sure there was no one around and that All Might was gone, he couldn't help himself anymore, and started crying and screaming, "Because I was born this way, since I was born nothing has ever gone right to me, because Demon Destiny. Because you gave them a quirk if they are despicable people, because you didn't give me anything." By now Midoriya Izuku was completely losing any hint of mental health he had left, and during his outburst he heard voices again, this time echoing were the words All Might had used to answer his question and with which he had destroyed his dream. "Don't take it too, stop, go away, I don't want to hear anything anymore, I can't stand anyone in this world anymore, you're all the same, you all look down on me just because you think I'm weak since I was born without quirk, go away and leave me alone. I just wanted to be a hero, what did I do to deserve all this? I don't understand." I think desperately in tears and Izuku destroyed by the day he had to face, he remained leaning against the alley wall for an hour trying to free himself from the voices and images his head was imagining. But it was all useless in the end, the shock was too much and he fainted. He woke up in a room unknown to him, feeling the rain falling outside. As he raised his head he saw the chandeliers filled with dust. He could very well have said that the room was once very beautiful, but over time it had transformed into the shadow it once was. "WMI?" he thought. The hairs on his arms rose as he heard the whispers of the room. He felt his heart beat faster as a sense of terror crept into his stomach like a piece of ice. He closed his eyes, inhaling and exhaling to keep calm. But suddenly you hear a dark voice. "I was waiting for you." Midoriya gasped and her face turned sickly white when she heard that dark voice. So many years have passed, Midoriya Izuku. Show yourself. After saying those words, Midoriya saw a figure wrapped in a green cloak and a mask that covered almost his entire face except his mouth. For every step he took, it seemed as if shadows were following him, moving with his body as he took each step. He was definitely a man, I think Izuku as he noticed the thin, but muscular build of the figure. "Who are you?" immediately asked Midoriya. "Strange, don't you recognize me?" asked the incredulous man. "Should I?" The man ignored his question and waved his hand behind him. "Tell me, Midoriya Izuku, what do you see?" Midoriya feels sick at the sight, putting his hand in front of his mouth so as not to vomit. "See corpses," he whispered. "Look closer at who you see." Izuku struggled to understand why bodies changed faces. They weren't always the same, sometimes they were heroes, sometimes they were his bullies while other times they were villains. "So, I don't understand, bodies change faces and they are not always the same people, sometimes they are bad while other times they are heroes," Izuku replied intimidated. The man smiled, his teeth frightening, and the reflection was visible. "It's normal, since my future has yet to be decided, but these corpses will fall, or the villains or heroes will die. Everything will depend on the chosen path." Midoriya was insecure. He didn't know what he meant. What does that mean? Is it you? What do you think? Izuku pauses for a second before nodding. "It was you. But then why do you say it will depend on your future?" "Because all this has yet to happen and will depend on the choices made, whether to follow the shadows or follow the soft light." "But why did you kill them? And I don't understand, why would you kill one of these people? Who are you?" Izuku chokes with choked breaths. "Power, of course," the man smiled. "Isn't that why we do everything? To feel more in control? To no longer be looked down on?" But you can't do dash," start Izuku, but it was interrupted by man. "Instead I will do it because I was born for that." Izuku, not amused by this man's game, asked, "Who are you?" The man smiled. "They call me the Green Shadow. See you, Midoriya Izuku, you'll understand everything in due time." Bye. I greet him with a maniacal and scary smile, but at the same time sad. Izuku woke up in the alley again in a cold sweat, looking around the alley in fear. The terrible image imprinted in his mind, he could almost feel his heart beating fast, not understanding who that man was. He looked around and tried to make sure there was no one who had witnessed his fits of rage, his nightmare, All Might's rejection and subsequent outburst, and stood there leaning, thinking no one had witnessed what had happened. But he didn't know that two figures on a roof had witnessed everything since he arrived in that alley. They had witnessed his outbursts of anger, his panic attacks, All Might's refusal until he fainted, and then they left through a portal. On the roof of a building overlooking the alley where Midoriya Izuku was, two people had witnessed everything that had happened to him, from arriving there with panic attacks and then to the arrival of the slimy villain who had captured him, and when they wanted to go there to save him came the symbol of peace, hero number 1 All Might, and they had looked curiously at the question posed by the green-haired boy to All Might, after witnessing the destruction of the boy's dreams and his fall into despair. They began to argue about what they should do. One of the two people, a boy of about 20 years old with grayish-blue hair and the habit of continuing to scratch his face and neck, spoke to the other. Kurogiri creates a warp. We need to talk to the master right away. We need to get this boy on our side immediately. We may have found a great ally. You saw everything that happened. He's a social outcast just like I was. And now just like me he hates heroes. He's just been rejected by the peace symbol himself. All Might, there's no way he still trusts heroes after everything that's happened, he exclaimed the boy. The second person, recognized as Kurogiri, more than one person looked like a monster, was practically a purple portal dressed as a bartender. He listened to the boy's and decided to listen to him. Okay, Tamura Shigaraki, but the master will decide, so you'll have to deal with him. If he thinks he can be a good ally, he will definitely put him on our side. Tamura Shigaraki smiled impatiently and said, so let's go talk to the master right away. Confident that his master would agree to take this boy under his wing and make him their ally, maybe even give him a quirk. As he finished his thoughts, he turned to the boy who had fainted from the shock caused by the rejection by the idol All Might and the hellish day he had faced, giving him a smile, while Kurogiri created the warp to go to the den and talk to his master about whether or not to bring this boy to their side. Just before crossing the warp he whispered, wait for me boy, as soon as the master accepts we will come back for you. Until then wait and we won't die anytime soon, just wait 1 or 2 hours, after which he crossed the warp. Shigaraki, Tamura and Kurogiri had just crossed the warp opened by Kurogiri and arrived at their lair, an abandoned bar in the Kamino area set up as their base of operations. As soon as they entered the bar in question, they immediately started the TV to get in touch with their master so they could tell him about the possible ally they had found. It took them about 10 seconds before they managed to get in touch with him. Tamura, Kurogiri, what do you need? An unknown, but disturbing voice answered from the TV screen. Shigaraki spoke without wasting time and immediately began telling his teacher what he and Kurogiri had witnessed. Master, Kurogiri and I today saw a very interesting boy named Midoriya Izuku. From what we could see he is bullied at school and because of this he suffers from panic attacks and anger. He's a social outcast like I once was. He's looked down on by other people because he was born without a quirk. He continued the story by explaining what he had understood about the boy while his teacher listened attentively, making only sounds of assent to make Shigaraki understand that he was following the speech, and Shigaraki continued his story. The boy had just managed to overcome a panic attack which was immediately attacked by a slime villain who wanted to use his body as a means. Until he could find a better one, Kurogiri and I were about to intervene, but just then, when Kurogiri and I were about to go help and save him, that Dmed All Might came to save him. He spat out All Might's name in a voice full of poison, then continued. After being saved, the boy wanted to ask All Might if he could ever become a hero even without a quirk, but All Might destroyed his dreams by telling him that he better become a police officer and that if he became a hero he would end up getting himself killed. After which All Might left, leaving the boy in the alley with no one and his hope destroyed by the rejection he received. As soon as that useless hero left, the boy burst into a scream of full hatred towards the whole society with quirks. I think he could be a great ally and I was hoping that if you considered him worthy of your trust and useful to our cause you would give him a quirk with which he can give us a hand in our fight against heroes. Master, I'm sure if we took him to our side we wouldn't regret it, Shigaraki finished after recounting everything that had happened. The man behind the TV listened to all this with great interest. Interesting, very interesting. Tamura, All Might destroying a boy's dream. If he were to join us, this could be one of his biggest mistakes. Now where is this boy? the voice behind the TV asked, very interested and amused about the situation. Master, the boy is still in that alley. When we left he had passed out due to the shock of everything he had to endure today. I thought it would be best to talk to you about the situation first before bringing him here, Master. Kurogyari anticipated Tamura. All right, Kurogyari, wise decision. You did well to talk to me about it first. Now go get that boy back and bring him here, before anyone finds him and takes him away, or worse yet, before anyone hurts him. As soon as you get him back I'll be very happy to be able to talk to him. Then I will test him if he is worthy and truly feels such powerful hatred as you. Tamura said, I could have a quirk that could be right for this boy, said the man behind the TV in a disturbing tone, already thinking about the role this young man could have in his plan. Thank you, Master. Then Kurogyari and I will go and get the boy and bring him here to her. Shigaraki replied enthusiastically that he had his master's approval. Then he turned to his companion Kurogyari, smiling, let's go get that boy and bring him to our side, and transform him into a real monster that will make the heroes tremble. Kurogyari nodded and opened a warp to return to that alley to the boy. Midoriya Izuku had slowly calmed down after everything he had faced that day, and that nightmare was still vivid in his mind. His mind still traveled to remember the man who had spoken to him in that nightmare, and he kept asking himself questions about who that man might be. As he faced these thoughts, he began to get up to go home and return to his mother, the only person who, despite everything, has always remained by my side. When everyone started mocking and humiliating me, she was always there for me, thought sadly the young man with green hair. As he walked out of that alley and back home, he suddenly heard a voice behind him, which made him jump with fear. Hey boy, is everything on purpose? You must be really sad about how the world is pushing you to the limit just because you don't have a quirk. When he turned around, Izuku noticed a boy with bluish-gray hair and a death-pale face, leaning against the wall and flanked by a black purple-faced man dressed in a bartender's suit, who looked more like a monster humanoid. Noticing the silence of the green-haired boy, Shigaraki continued speaking. Won't you ask me who I am or how I know these things about you, Midoriya Izuku? Unsure what to think, Midoriya replied. Who are you? And how do you know these things about me? He said defensively. Calmly, boy. One question at a time. Shigaraki said, making the sign with his index finger. Don't worry, we have no evil intentions, young man. Kurogyari spoke this time. Midoriya could not understand the situation and who were the two individuals who had appeared behind him, and mostly knew his absence of quirk and also his name. They had appeared without making the slightest noise, and this terrified the boy. And he decided to agree and do what the boy had told him by asking one question at a time. Okay, so, who are you first? Chuckling at his question, confusing Midoriya, the young man replied. Introduce me, I am Shigaraki Tamura and I am the leader of the League of Villains. The young man replied, then continued pointing to the other man, and it is Kurogyari, my right-hand man. He said it all, giggling at Midoriya's confused look. The L League of Bad Guys? What do you want from me? Midoriya asked, now out of his mind and scared. To say Midoriya was shocked would be an understatement. Not only had he faced the worst day of his life, but now he was faced with the leader of a certain villain league and his right-hand man, and didn't even know what they wanted from him, and he didn't even have an escape route in case the worst happened. Now calm now, as Kurogyari said a little while ago, we are not here to hurt you. Shigaraki chuckled at seeing the fear in the green-haired boy. That's right, we came here for a very specific reason. We want to propose that you join us, Midoriya Izuku. Kurogori said in a very serious voice. What? Dito, you want me to join you, but I'm useless. I don't even have a weirdness because you would like me to join you. Midoriya screamed in surprise at that request, his face fully expressing his state of mind. His eyes almost fell out of their sockets in disbelief. He couldn't believe what he had heard. After the shouted questions from the green-haired boy, it was Shigaraki who spoke. Now we'll explain everything to you, boy, but calm down first. Laughing at the confusion and anxiety on Midoriya's part. But I can't join you. My dream has always been to become a hero, like All Might. He said those words, lowering his voice more and more until it almost became a whisper because of the sadness of remembering the events that had happened with the symbol of peace. So what? Do you still want to follow this dream when All Might himself destroyed it for you? Noticing the confusion in the green-haired boy's eyes, Shigaraki explained how they knew. We witnessed it all. We saw how the symbol of peace completely destroyed the dreams you had and immediately left, abandoning you here alone to suffer. Because you are still tied to that dream, Shigaraki expressed anger. Then continued more calmly, there's nothing wrong with expressing your anger, let off steam. Get revenge on the people who hurt you by ending this false world, where people have the courage to look down on you just because they were born with better luck than you, just because they were lucky enough to be born with a quirk. I understand that it hurts you, but you have to accept that the Society of Heroes is not pink and floral as they want you to believe, but a society of sheet, full of discrimination against the weakest, and I think you've figured that out by now. Midoriya heard those words and realized that the boy was right and replied, yes, you are right, but I have nothing to be able to fight that society. How can I get revenge if I can't even defend myself? I have no quirk, I have no means to defend myself or even help you in the battle against the heroes. Why do you want me to join you if I'm so useless? Hearing those words, Shigaraki was deeply struck not only by the sadness they were imbued with, but also because that look and sadness reminded him of himself as a child, abandoned by everyone, marginalized by society and left to his fate with no one to help him. And he had remained alone until his master came to save him and offer him a chance at salvation. The one who responded this time was not Shigaraki, who was still gagged because of the words expressed by Midoriya that had hit him hard in the deep, making him remember a dark chapter in his life, but Kurojiiri, we want you to join us Midoriya, because we heard your screams following All Might's rejection which completely destroyed your dream and your hopes. And even though those screams were prey to despair and caused by anger at not being able to pursue your dream, they were filled with hatred. And then Shigaraki looking at you saw himself in you and remembered when he was little. He too was once an outcast from society for reasons other than yours, but like you he was abandoned to his fate without anyone extending a hand to help him, until the arrival of our master who offered him a chance at salvation and freedom, and we are giving you the same chance, so think carefully about your decision. Following Kurojiiri's words, Shigaraki recovered from his state of shock and spoke. Think about it Midoriya, don't you want a chance? Don't you want a chance to take charge of your life and change this FING shitty world? Don't you want to be able to destroy the people who inflicted pain on you and make them bend to your will? Don't you want to be able to prove everyone wrong about you? Since you can't become a hero, become a villain and prove the whole world wrong about you, said the young man as he approached Midoriya. Those words entered Midoriya's mind and made the boy take his first leap into the darkness. I could truly take revenge for all the humiliation and abuse I suffered, even without being able to give anything useful to their cause. They want to give me this opportunity. Why? But would it really be the right thing to do? Could I still look in the mirror like this without disgusting myself? With all those conflicting thoughts and questions in his head, his brain was going haywire. But then suddenly he remembered that no one had ever cared what they did to him. Every time he was humiliated in public, the adults who passed by pretended not to see. They were the first people, apart from his mother, who had sent her to him from the age of 4, and at that moment something in Midoriya Izuku's heart and mind changed definitively. Something cold crept into her heart. It wasn't yet pure hatred. But he had made a choice. He no longer wanted to suffer other humiliations or other abuses. He wanted to change that society into something better, and that boy with the purple man, they were giving him this opportunity by offering them their hand as a lifeline, and in the end the green-haired boy made a decision. If you really want to give me a chance, I can't let it slip away. I want to destroy everyone who made me suffer. I want to make the whole world bend to my will. I want to make All Might regret rejecting me and destroying my dream. I want to prove everyone wrong about me, Midoriya said with a new flame lighting up in her eyes. Yes, that's what I wanted to hear you say. Tell me what you want to do with the world and our society, exclaimed Shigaraki ecstatically. I want to completely destroy them and recreate them to create a place where everyone can coexist, with or without quirk. There will be no discrimination because of something that cannot be controlled. I want a world where everyone can live free. And I will get it at any cost, using any means. Shigaraki would have expected anything but such a response surprised him, and not a little. Not so much for the goal of the green-haired boy but for the way it was said. The conviction with which Midoriya Izuku said that phrase made a 32-toothed smile burst on Shigaraki Tamura's face. I knew it. I knew this boy would be a great ally by our side with him. With his hatred growing more and more as time goes on, no one will be able to stop us. When he receives his strangeness and we are numerous and strong enough to declare a real war, there will be no heroes who can stop us. Shigaraki thought ecstatically. As Shigaraki continued to think happily, Kurogyari spoke. Oh, this is a truly incredible goal, young man. I guess your answer to our proposal to join us is a yes. Midoriya nodded. As Shigaraki said a little while ago, if I can't become a hero, then I'll become a villain and make everyone regret looking down on me. He spoke these words with all the anger in his body. Maybe I've finally found my place in the world. I'm going to destroy everything that's rotten in this shitty world. All Might you will regret having destroyed my dream, while you Bakugo will experience a suffering that no one has ever felt in his life. I will make you regret your birth if it was the last thing I do, I promise, he thought with a hatred that was growing deeper and deeper in Midoriya's heart. Midoriya Izuku, I knew you would be perfect. Follow us and together we will conquer the world by sinking the world of heroes and destroying this society full of scum. Shigaraki exclaimed towards the boy and then turned towards Kurogyari. Open a warp towards our lair so we can take the boy to his master. Then, whispering, he continued the sentence so that the green-haired boy could not hear the last piece. So he can talk to him and evaluate him, and when he realizes that the boy is worthy, he will give him the quirk he was talking about, which might have been appropriate for Midoriya. Midoriya watched the conversation without understanding what they were saying when suddenly Kurogyari created a portal. Come Midoriya, now we will take you to meet the master. Shigaraki told him. Excuse me, who is this master? You will find out when we are there and you will talk to him. Shigaraki replied. Okay. Midoriya said without asking any more questions and began following Shigaraki through the portal created by Kurogyari. I finally found some people who don't look down on me because of my quirk-free nature. Maybe I really found my place. Maybe this is what I was born for and why fate made me face all those difficulties. All these positive thoughts for Midoriya were new since for 7 years now he could no longer find reasons to be happy, and with these thoughts he went through the portal with Shigaraki. They had just passed through the portal and now Midoriya Izuku was in front of an abandoned bar with Shigaraki and Kurogyari next to it. Is this the basis? Asked the other two, who nodded in response. Now Midoriya, you will meet the master. Go ahead. Kurogyari, open the door. Show our working base to the newcomer, said Shigaraki, laughing darkly. When he saw Kurogyari and Shigaraki enter and he, behind them, set out to follow them, he thought that his life had finally taken a major turn and that he had finally found his place in the world and in society. Now all he had to do was know this master. Letting these thoughts flow in his head, he took courage and prepared himself for knowing the master. Midoriya entered the abandoned building ready to meet the master of Shigaraki and Kurogyari. The interior had the appearance of a bar where the elderly gathered to drink and play cards. Despite being a new place and never seen before, Midoriya immediately felt at home. Welcome, young Midoriya. Please feel like you're home. A disturbing voice came out of the TV. Midoriya, slightly nervous, realized that this voice was most likely that of the master Shigaraki and Kurogyari had told him about, had no idea how to deal with the situation and tried to calm down, trying to listen to what this man had to say, sat down and started listening carefully. Shigaraki and Kurogyari told me about you. I'm glad you got here safe and sound, said the voice. Oh yes. He asked in surprise that the two had already spoken about him to their master. He then continued speaking. I got here safely thanks to Shigaraki and Kurogyari, who found me in that alley and decided to take me with them here. I understand. Kurogyari and Tamura, would you mind going out for a moment so I can talk to the boy privately? Asked for the voice. The two nodded and headed for the bar exit. After they left, only Midoriya and the master's voice from the television screen remained inside the bar. The green-haired boy was nervous about having to have that conversation alone, so he decided to remain silent and wait for the voice to speak. Young Midoriya, do you know why you were brought here? Shigaraki and Kurogyari told me you meant to get me into your league. But first you should evaluate me and see if I was worthy of joining your cause, the boy replied. Well, I see those two have already told you something. Yes, but I still haven't understood how it can make me useful to your cause. Midoriya waited a few moments and the voice still didn't speak. He was starting to doubt that with what he had said he had completely ruined the possibility of joining them and that he would be thrown away as a nobody by them too. But then finally the voice spoke. Listen to me, young Midoriya, I want to ask you a question. What do you know about quirks in today's world? Midoriya felt the weight of the question reverberate through the room. His heart was pounding, his hands were shaking slightly. It was not only curiosity, but also the knowledge that his answer could decide his future in that place. I know enough. His quirks are not just powers, they are tools of control. This world is built on injustice. Whoever has a quirk decides who has value and who must suffer. Heroes, those who are supposed to protect us, actually only defend the order that favors them, leaving the weakest to rot. I have never had a quirk, and for that I have been ignored, humiliated, betrayed. But I've seen it all, I've learned it all, and I don't intend to suffer anymore. I know what's wrong with this society, and I also know that I don't want to spend my life in this society full of disparities anymore. I no longer want to be a victim, I want those who look down on me to pay, and I will rebuild this world according to my rules, he replied in a hesitant but firm voice. From the TV, the voice grew deeper, more calculating, almost a whisper. Interesting. So you understand perfectly how this society. You see the disparity, the injustices, but above all you bear a grudge against them. Midoriya clenched her fists under the table, her face tense. It's not just resentment. I feel anger but also hatred towards this society. I was humiliated and beaten by who should have been my friend, then I was ignored by the adults who watched me suffer who should be an example, and finally I was rejected by the heroes, by my idol. And all this just because in this shitty society people believe they have the right to look down on you just because you were born stronger than someone else. From the TV, the sound of the voice sounded like an enveloping whisper, trying to penetrate the boy's mind. You are filled with anger, hatred, frustration, hidden treasures for those who know how to use them. These feelings, if guided, can give you strength, a force that few possess. Midoriya took a deep breath, trying to control the crazy heartbeat. He felt a shiver down his spine, but something inside him lit up. A spark he had never felt in his years of life. The possibility of being fundamental to someone. But I don't know how to use these feelings. I have nothing, no weirdness, nothing to protect myself or to change the world, he said, almost to himself. A few seconds passed and then the voice spoke. And here I am, young Midoriya. I can give you something you want. The boy gasped, his breathing almost stopped. He didn't understand what he could give him and waited. The voice coming from the TV was so intense that it seemed to fill every corner of the room. I was born with a power, a unique power, young Midoriya. The voice coming from the screen became slower, almost whispered. Every word heavy and calculated. A power that allows me to steal the quirks of others. And not only that, I can use them to create combination attacks, or even transfer them to whoever I choose. Midoriya remained still, her breathing suspended. His heart pounded in his chest, his hands trembled slightly as he tried to process what he had just heard. This is impossible, he whispered, his words almost strangled by fear and disbelief. Steal quirks, and use them, or give them to others, how could such power exist? Yet young Midoriya, this power exists. Seconds passed as Midoriya tried to memorize everything he had just been told. Suddenly a light bulb went on and the boy spoke in a low voice, almost a whisper. See, with this power, could I also receive an quirk? That's what you mean when you say you can give me something I want, the green-haired boy asked hopefully. I see you understand. It's been since Shigaraki told me about you that I've been curious to meet you. From what he told me, I thought I had a perfect quirk for you, and I received confirmation that what he told me was true. However, your mind and body to control it are still immature. To receive it, you will have to train and demonstrate that you can grasp this quirk. Midoriya's eyes lit up to hear those words. What strangeness is this? Do I have to train because I'm still weak? If I received it now I would risk dying? You think dash. The green-haired boy started flooding the voice behind the screen with questions when he was interrupted. Now calm down with the questions, you'll know everything in due time. You've already dealt with too much today. You'd better rest, young Midoriya. Tomorrow, when you wake up, we'll talk about the training you'll have to undergo. The voice behind the screen chuckled darkly. Midoriya didn't want to ruin anything, so he agreed and decided to postpone the questions until tomorrow. Now boy, we need to talk about an important issue for your future, but first, he paused for a moment and then continued in a higher tone. Tamura, Kurogyari, come back. The two people who had brought Midoriya had returned. Shigaraki went to sit next to Midoriya while Kurogyari went to put behind the bar counter. Now that we're all here we need to resolve an important issue. Midoriya Izuku, to be able to endure the training to receive the quirk and join our cause you will have to put your heart and soul into this. So you will have to make a painful choice, you will have to say goodbye to your family, we will stage your death with another corpse and make it look like it is yours and that you have decided to commit suicide. By doing so, your only goal will be to focus on training and improve, said the voice from behind the screen. But my mother is waiting for me at home. I would destroy her if she found out I was going to commit suicide. I can't do something like that to her. She has always remained by my side. Midoriya said defensively and melancholically at the thought of having to make her mother suffer by faking her death and having to stay away from her forever. I know, young man, that it's a tough choice to make, but you have to choose whether to go home or stay here with us and dedicate your entire existence to the goal of eliminating heroes and destroying this society. Midoriya, if you joined us we would become unbeatable over time, we will be like a family, make the right choice, you will not regret it. Shigaraki tried to convince him. But if one day we manage to achieve our goal, will I be able to see my mother again? And if so, will he accept me? Asked the green-haired young man wistfully. Young Midoriya, sure you can meet her again. Shigaraki, Kurogyari, and I will help you in everything so you can become powerful, and we will make sure to sink the heroes. The voice answered calmly, trying to reassure the boy. Midoriya noticed that she had answered, but avoided the question of whether her mother would accept her, knowing that it would be up to her and that there would be no certainty. I'm sorry, Mom, maybe when you find out you'll hate me, but maybe I finally found a place with friends for the first time. I'm sorry, I hope you can forgive me when you find out everything. I think sadly of Midoriya, chasing away those thoughts, he replied. Okay, I've decided I'll join you. I'll dedicate my whole life to the destruction of heroes, you can count on me, but I have a question. Turning to the TV screen he asked, who exactly are you? I'm all for one, but you can just call me Master. A day later I'll tell you my story and how I became who I am today. But now let's focus on faking your death. Here we have corpses whose DNA has been eliminated from the blood. We have a green-haired boy who can very well be confused with you, but we need a vial of your blood so we can transfer the DNA into the blood of this corpse. The three people listened intently to the voice to stage Midoriya's death. All right, Master. Midoriya, cut off the palm of your hand and drop the blood in here. Shigaraki said, handing the green-haired young man a vial and a knife. Midoriya took a few breaths and he cut off the palm of his hand, let out only a gasp and dropped the blood into the vial. Very well, Kurogyari, take care of bringing the blood here, thank you. And so the TV disconnected, leaving the three in the bar alone. How anxious you could have warned me that he would want to train and test me to see if I could get a quirk. He complained to Shigaraki and Kurogyari. Haha, and where would the fun part have been? By the time we got back in, your face had turned white as a veil. He teased Shigaraki. Boy, you were good, obviously you surprised the teacher since he decided to train you. Try not to disappoint him. Now I'll bring him the DNA, see you tomorrow. Good night, Shigaraki. Good night, Midoriya. So he moved in with the master so he could bring him the vial, leaving the two boys alone. After seeing him disappear, Shigaraki turns to Midoriya and asks with a smile on his face, would you like to play some video games? Izuku? Midoriya was surprised that he had called him by his name, which was strange as only his mother had ever called him that in her life. After recovering from the surprise, he replied, yes, I would like to. Tamura. He hesitantly said his new friend's name because he didn't know how he would react. Don't worry, Izuku, then let's go. Shigaraki replied, noting the hesitation. He began to accompany him to his room. They walked down a narrow corridor to the end. Along the way it was full of signs that made Izuku uncomfortable. However, when they arrived at the room and Shigaraki opened the door, all worries vanished. The room was full of old consoles from PS1 to PS5 as well as Wii, Nintendo consoles up to Xboxes. With shelves full of games all sorted alphabetically and by console, Midoriya realized that Shigaraki must be a die-hard video game fan, thinking that deep down, having nothing to do, he spent his free time playing. Do you know any of these games? Shigaraki churches. Yes, but I never had the chance to play it because of the studio and because the money was stolen from me. Midoriya chuckled while trying to look away embarrassedly. So how about trying them now? Shigaraki asked with a smile. Seriously? Let's play. Midoriya exclaimed. They spent most of the night playing and having fun as if they were just two boys who had known each other for years. When they finished playing, they decided to take a ride around Kamino. While they were walking, Shigaraki thought of proposing to Midoriya to destroy some cars and disorder out some in the neighborhood. To this, the green-haired boy immediately accepted, and they went from one car to another, hitting them, breaking windows and ruining the doors until passers-by noticed them and approached. They made the two teenagers run away, laughing at the damage they had caused. After escaping, they returned to their shelter. It was now 4 o'clock and the two boys decided to say goodbye and go to sleep. Thanks, Tamura. This is the best moment of my life. Good night. I'm glad you had fun. Good night, Izuku. The two said goodbye and went to sleep, preparing for the news that tomorrow the body of a fake Midoriya will be found by the police and considered dead. At the same time the two boys were having fun, in an apartment in Mizudafu, a mother was worried because she hadn't heard from her son since the morning he went to school. That mother was Inko Midoriya. I knew I shouldn't have forced him to go to school with the constant abuse he suffered. I should have convinced him to stay home. Now I don't know where he is. I haven't heard from him anymore, and if he was somewhere alone, my poor Izuku, what happened to him? He despaired in tears. Now surrendered to the fact that her son was not returning, she called the police to let them know that her son was missing. Hello, I'm Inko Midoriya. I want to report my son Izuku Midoriya missing. I haven't heard from him since this morning and I don't know what happened to him. Please help me look for him. Inko asked the police in despair. Sure, ma'am. Tell me what he was dressed like today, what he looked like, whether he was wearing anything that made him recognize or understand at first glance that it was him, and whether he had problems with anyone or was bullied or something else. Inko began to tell how he was dressed in his red shoes and his usual school clothes and his yellow backpack. Then he talked about the distinctive trait that could make him recognize his green hair, and finally he told what his son had to endure every day at school due to the absence of quirk. The policeman listens carefully to the mother's whole story. All right, ma'am, don't worry, we'll do everything we can to find your son. As soon as we hear from you, we'll let you know. Now let's go to rest, ma'am, don't worry. Inko hung up the phone and tried to fall asleep, trying to think positively that her son had just played a prank and would come home the next day apologizing. But those thoughts were overwhelmed by other negatives, and before sleeping one last thought passed through his mind. Please, darling, tell me you're okay. I miss you, Izuku. With this thought he abandoned himself to sleep, hoping that the next day would be a better day. But he still didn't know what he would face the next day and the suffering in the days to come. Kurogyari had just brought the vial of Midoriya Izuku's DNA to his master, all for one. Great job with this blood. We can transfer the DNA and make sure that when they go for the DNA test they will find that Midoriya Izuku died and count it as suicide because of his life on the margins of society due to the misfortune of being born without quirk. All for one smiled coldly, then continued, Garaki busy transferring the DNA. I want it ready by morning so Kurogyari can go and place it in that alley, making it look like he jumped off the roof and took his own life. All right, master. Garaki responded as he took the vial of DNA and the corpse and went to his lab so he could carry out all for one's order. Now Kurogyari, I need to talk to you about the quirk I want to give the boy. It's called the Abyssal Shadow. This quirk allows its user to generate, manipulate, and even merge with shadows. It's an ethereal mass that responds to the user's emotions. He calmly explained all for one by checking that Kurogyari was following his speech. Then, after putting the information in his head, continued. This power cannot be used lightly, it could completely destroy the boy. So before giving it to him, I prepared a workout that the boy will have to face. By my calculations, within 10 months he should complete it and then he will be ready to receive the quirk. Master, do you think the boy will be able to bear this power? Oh yes, Kurogiri, I felt his emotions. This power responds to any emotion felt. The stronger the emotion and the more dangerous the power will be. Okay, Master, what kind of training will the boy have to follow? I have prepared here on this card a training divided into 4 phases. The first phase will focus on physical improvement. The boy is malnourished, so I have already ordered Garaki to prepare a complete high-protein diet. Then he will perform non-mutant muscle strengthening injections. He will be kept under Garaki's constant control. The boy will have to train at the same time as the diet and injections. He'll be running treadmills with oxygen-reduced masks to improve his lung capacity, will increase his strength. We're creating a gym for him where he'll do progressive weight training and also train on body weight. Finally, he'll train on agility and stealth by doing parkours and obstacle courses without making himself hurt. This first phase will have to last 4 months, so he will have a body ready to resist and move with precision. Then we will move on to the second phase in which he will have to train mentally and emotionally, trying to prevent him from being overwhelmed by the shadows, and he must learn not to get SCKD into the darkness and demonstrate that he can control it. He will train in a soundproof room immersed in the darkness for 6 hours a day, in which he will have to learn to control his heartbeat, remain lucid in solitude and listen to his thoughts without being overwhelmed by them. Then we'll have him face trials to overcome fear and desensitize that emotion. You'll create unrealistic illusions of his worst memories, so he'll learn to deal with his trauma, control panic, and learn to channel anger. I will teach him to manage emotions and increase and decrease them at will. This phase will also last 4 months. Finally, the last phase will last only 30 days. We will send him to Kurashima Island, an island off the map, which is not huge but is lethal. It is a thick and dark jungle. It features animals mutated by experimental quirks and former criminals abandoned as waste still alive. If he survives without help, he will learn to kill in cold blood if necessary, and if he can master his emotions without going crazy, in that case he will be ready to get this quirk. Kurogiri listened carefully to the entire program and finally spoke. I understand, Master. It will be very difficult but necessary. Exactly, Kurogiri. If that boy passes this training and manages to pass the Kurashima Island test without help, he will be ready and become a lethal weapon. All for One said all this with a sadistic smile forming on his face. All right, Master, so will you talk to the boy about it tomorrow? Kurogiri asked. Yes, but I'll just talk to him about training. He doesn't have to know anything about the quirk he'll receive, otherwise we would just risk him starting to bandage his head thinking about this power. I understand, Master. Now Kurogiri, go to Dr. Garaki, and when he's finished his work go and bring the body to the scene. See you tomorrow, Kurogiri. And with this last sentence All for One left. And there was only one Kurogiri left, lost in thoughts of the terrifying power his master was about to give that boy. Calmed by his thoughts, he headed for the doctor's room. Garaki had just completed his work when Kurogiri entered. Dr. Garaki, you're finished? Churches? Yes, we can bring it. Kurogiri nodded and opened a warp where the master had decided that they should leave that corpse. After crossing the bend, Garaki and Kurogiri positioned his body so that it looked like he had jumped from the roof. His face was disfigured, so he couldn't recognize it, and his hair was green. Garaki laughed. I made a work of art. No one will recognize who the boy is, and when they do the DNA test they will be surprised. Kurogiri, we can go back to my lab. I have some homework for the master to complete. Yes, doctor, let's go. So they went back to the lab. Midoriya Izu had just let himself go in his sleep. As soon as he opened his eyes, he noticed that he was back in that room he had first seen that morning. How strange, twice in the same day, that it was the same dream again? Welcome back, Midoriya Izu. We met again quite early, said, with that manic smile that gave him the shivers. The same man he had seen in the nightmare he had faced that afternoon. Hello. Green Shadow, why am I here again? He greeted Midoriya, remembering the name he had told him in the other nightmare. I had to talk to you about something that maybe you won't understand. It's about your future. My future? I don't understand you. One day you may be torn between two choices. The choice you make will decide your future. To decide, be careful not to let yourself be manipulated, follow what you want to do and what your heart tells you and you will make the best choice possible, said the man in the shadows. I don't understand what all this means, asked the green-haired boy, confused, what he meant when he said not to be manipulated and to follow what his heart would tell him. Oh, don't worry, when the time comes you'll understand. Until then I don't know if we'll meet again. Goodbye Midoriya Izuku. The man smiled as he slowly disappeared. Shortly before he disappeared completely, Midoriya Izuku noticed a blurry figure approaching next to the man and smiling in his direction, but she couldn't figure out who he was. He was startled awake by the alarm. He woke up all sweaty and went to the bathroom to rinse to recover. Another time the questions in his head started to take over. This time they increased again because of the blurry figure he had seen flanking the man before he disappeared and what the man had told him. What the hell does it mean that I will have to decide between two choices that will determine my future and I will not have to be manipulated? And then who was that figure? That person who approached the green shadow? Midoriya thought. With these thoughts in his head he got ready and left his room, which was 2 rooms before Shigaraki's, and headed towards the bar not knowing what awaited him. After arriving at the bar around 9:30, Midoriya noticed that Shigaraki had not yet woken up and at the bar there was only Kurogyari waiting for them with the TV screen on. Good morning, young man. Kurogyari turned to him and noticed him. Good morning, Kurogyari. Good morning, master. Midoriya hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to turn to All for One. Good morning, young Midoriya. The response from the voice behind the screen arrived. Midoriya sat down on the couch and realized they were waiting for Shigaraki so they could start talking and planning for the future. So he also started waiting. About 30 minutes passed before Shigaraki entered through the door, sleepy and giving a general good morning to everyone. When Shigaraki landed on a stool at the All for One bar, he spoke. Well, now that we're all here we can start talking about our future plans. We still have 3.5 years before All Might joins as a professor at the UA according to our information. So we have enough time to improve and find new allies. In this time of this you will take care of it, Tamura, as leader of the league. After receiving it, he took a break waiting for Shigaraki's sign of agreement and continued speaking, this time to Midoriya. Young man, yesterday I started studying the best kind of training to make you absorb the quirk I've prepared for you. My calculations on how long you'll have to train to be able to receive the quirk I had in mind say that within about 10 months you should be able to receive it. Really? I still can't believe I'm going to have a quirk of my own. What training should I follow? The green-haired boy asked in one breath. My boy, stay calm. You'll find out one thing at a time. The type of training will be divided into 4 phases. The first phase will be physical enhancement and will be the one you'll have to face from today until the next 4 months. Then the second phase will focus on mental and emotional training and will last for 4 or 5 months. Then you will have to face the third phase, which will be a survival challenge to see the level you have reached and will last 30 precise days, and finally the fourth phase will be the reception of the quirk. Doing so you will have approximately 2 years before we reveal ourselves to the whole world to train you to control the quirk and learn to make the most of it. Concluded from behind the TV screen. Okay, can I at least know what quirk I'll have? Midoriya asked enthusiastically, as her thoughts traveled dreaming of what quirk he could ever get. Shigaraki noticed all this and burst into a little chuckle. Izuku, calm down, you might explode your brain with all those thoughts. Shigaraki joked. Shut up, Tamura. I just want to know what my quirk will be. Midoriya replied with an imperceptible smile. Guys, stop it, the master still has to finish talking. Kurogyari attempted to keep the 2 boys silent. Don't worry, Kurogyari. Let them have fun. Now back to us. Midoriya, I'm sorry, but you won't know what quirk you'll receive until you've completed the entire workout. And for each phase of the workout, I'll explain the challenges you'll have to overcome from phase to phase. For now, think about having breakfast and cheering yourself up. Young Midoriya, after Kurogyari will bring you here to me where we will begin the 4 months of physical enhancement. I will introduce you to someone who will follow you personally. He finished his speech to the boy and turned to Kurogyari. He was found. Great job, show it to the boys too. He received a head movement in response and finished speaking. See you later, young Midoriya. He said all for one before the TV screen went off. As soon as the TV screen went off, Kurogiri turned on the news and spoke. It's been done. Midoriya Izuku is now considered dead to everyone, so you'll have to choose a villain name when you have to show yourself to the world. As Kurogiri spoke, Shigaraki and Midoriya saw the news footage scrolling and heard the reporter speaking. This night it seems that his mother reported him missing. Unfortunately he was found dead, apparently a suicide, by the police in this alley away from the Aldra school this morning around 7:30, where he had recently started middle school. From what we know, the boy was bullied because he had no quirk. If we have any new news, we will inform you, the line understudy. After he finished talking the two stopped listening and turned off the TV. Great, now anyone who thinks I'm dead, even my mother, I hope one day she'll understand me, said the green-haired boy in a melancholy tone. Come on, buddy, let's go have some fun before you have to start training, then who knows when you'll have a chance to have fun again. Shigaraki spoke, trying to distract Midoriya from his bad thoughts. Kurogi, understanding the situation, spoke. Yes, Midoriya, go and have fun. That you'll start your hellish training program this afternoon. Oh okay, let's go Tamura. Midoriya responded by getting the negative thoughts out of her head. The two headed to Shigaraki's room to go play video games and clear their minds. They knew that for a long time it would be one of the last moments of leisure the two could have. Midoriya would have had to train to get the quirk, while Shigaraki would have had to make some new allies to then be able to prepare the attack on the UA when the time comes. For Inko Midoriya, the night had been a torment. She had woken up several times during the night, always hoping that her Izuku had returned home, but every time she went to check the room it was always empty, and every time she fell back asleep, always waking up the same way. But this time she was awakened by the sound of the bell that made her wake up and jump out of bed, her heart pounding in his chest. For a single second he hoped it was his son. Izuku. It's Izuku, he's back home. Please tell me it's him and it was all a joke. Inko prayed in his head, but deep down the anxiety that they hadn't found him was eating her up from the inside. She walked toward the door with an uncertain step, continuing to pray in his mind as he pulled his robe tighter around his body. She took a breath and opened the door, hoping to find himself facing the sight of his son. But when she opened up, his anxiety grew even more when she found himself faced with two policemen with tense faces, and it was as if they were full of anxiety, their eyes avoiding his. That behavior of theirs was destroying poor Inko. Mrs. Midoriya? Asked the male officer, hesitantly and all too quietly. Please tell me you found my son, tell me you found him and he's fine, please. Inko cried, seeing that reaction was destroying the two policemen who didn't know how to behave. Neither of them had the courage to speak. They were afraid of destroying that poor woman by giving him the news, but they both knew they couldn't keep it a secret. Inko Midoriya looked at them, waiting for a response that didn't come. She hoped for a positive response, but the more the seconds passed and the more she fell into despair. Finally the female officer took courage and took a step forward. As she prepared to speak and break the sad news to that poor mother, her gaze was full of pity for what the woman in front of her would have to endure. Ma'am, I fear I have bad news. Before she could continue, Inko fell to the ground as if she had already understood everything, and with tears starting to flow like a river she whispered, No, please no, it is not possible, please, starting to tremble. The officer, as if lifting an unbearable weight, continued talking. This morning a body was found, dressed exactly as she had said his son had left home yesterday morning, and the DNA test confirmed his identity. According to our initial reports, the boy committed suicide yesterday by jumping from a building. I'm so sorry, ma'am. All those words shattered like a glacial wave against Inko. There was a silence, unreal, suffocating, total silence. Inko, you feel his legs give way. So as not to fall, she leaned against a wall. From his mouth then came a broken scream, almost unrecognizable because of the tears of despair that kept coming out of him. And no, it is not possible. But because he did it. We are very sorry. The policewoman looked at her with teary eyes before continuing. We think the reason for her suicide was due to bullying, due to the absence of quirk. Inko shook her head in despair. No. My baby, can't be true. Izuku, my light. It can't be true. He was always fighting for his dreams. He had never let anything get him down. He apologized even when it wasn't needed. My baby can't really be dead. Izuku was afraid of the world, of how people looked down on him, but he was strong. My baby was the strongest person I've ever known because he took his own life. With his hands on his face to try to stop the tears from coming out. Because he didn't talk to me. Because instead of committing suicide he didn't come to me to talk about his problems. I would have helped him. I knew I should stop sending him to school since he was always being bullied but he didn't want to. If only I had insisted, if only I had understood. The pain exploded and his legs finally gave out and he fell to the ground with heartbreaking screams that made even the police themselves bend with the pain of loss. I'm his mother. I had to protect him. I had to be there for him, because he didn't talk to me. I was a failure, right? Otherwise he wouldn't have left like this. The last words came out like a whisper. The policewoman knelt at her side but without invading her space but offering him at least a human presence, and tried to reassure her. Mrs. Midoriya, it's not your fault, no one could have ever foreseen this. Many times the boys show nothing, not even a sign of their pain. She chose each word calculatedly knowing that a single wrong word could destroy the lady in front of him even more. But the words couldn't reach Inko, who was shaking her head in despair. Izuku, my baby was all I had. He was my whole world. How can I live without him? His breathing became increasingly irregular and broken by constant sobs. Those last words further destroyed the policemen who, unable to contain themselves, also burst into tears. Madam, you won't be alone in this, I promise, we'll stay by your side until you get through this, said the policeman with a lump in his throat as he handed her a handkerchief. But those words didn't reach Inko, who was now devastated by everything that had happened. For her the whole world had broken, and the only thought that echoed in his head was horrible. Izuku, my child, why didn't you come back to me? Why did you leave me like this? Why all this? Inko was desperate and had lost everything by now. The police understood the pain she was feeling and decided to stay by her side until she calmed down, and then they would take her with them to a doctor to check that everything was in order. Midoriya and Shigaraki enjoyed playing the games for 1-2 hours until Kurogiri went to call Midoriya to go to All for One and start his own training. Midoriya, come on, we have to go to the master. Go prepare some changes. In the next few months until the end of training you will remain under the master's watchful eye. Within 10 minutes come to the bar we are going to. All right Kurogiri, I'll get ready and come, said Midoriya. Go buddy, and show what you're made of. When you finish training and get the quirk you will make the heroes tremble. I encourage this with a lopsided Shigaraki smile. Thanks Tamura, I'll give it my all. See you when I finish my training. Hi Tamura. After which the green-haired boy headed to his room to pack his suitcase and get dressed. Midoriya didn't know what clothes to wear since he hadn't brought anything except his school clothes, which Kurogiri and Shigaraki had first worn to the bar. He decided to look anywhere to find something, and when he opened the closet, he noticed it was full of training clothes. She started putting a few t-shirts and shorts in her bag, then took some underwear and socks, got dressed in a hurry and started going to the bar, not intending to be late for fear of how All for One might take her. Young man, you did quickly, well follow me. Kurogiri told him as soon as Midoriya passed through the door of the bar, creating a warp and signaling to follow him. The green-haired boy followed him, and as soon as he passed through the portal, he found himself inside a laboratory, with a figure wearing a black mask on his face who spoke as soon as he saw him. Oh young Midoriya, I was waiting for you. Today we'll start your training. I warn you it won't be light at all. In fact, you'll suffer a lot, especially at the beginning. However, if the path you want to take is to become powerful, that's the only way, you understand, right? He spoke in a dark, sharp voice that made Midoriya realize that the man in the black mask was All for One. And master, I didn't expect it to be you. Before continuing, the boy took a breath to calm down. I guess training won't be easy and it will be a very hard test to endure. But I'm ready, I won't back down in front of anything. Hearing these words, All for One under the mask, he expressed a crazy smile that no one could see and began to speak. Very good boy was what I was hoping to hear you say. Now I want to introduce you to a person. The one who will take care of controlling you and keeping an eye on your improvements. Will take care of everything from diet to physical well-being, Dr. Garaki. I point to the metal door as it opened with a slow, almost surgical sound. Izuku turned his gaze towards the door while the anxiety went up to his throat, curious to find out who this Dr. Garaki was. A short, elderly man with thick glasses and a soft and controlled walk came out of the metal door as he cast calculating glances at Midoriya. He studied it with his eyes as a surgeon studies a patient before operating on him. After a silence that lasted a few seconds while Dr. Garaki was in charge of studying him from head to toe, after which he turned to the boy with a gentle smile. "Midoriya Izuku, we finally know each other." His voice was warm but devoid of any emotion. The dark-haired boy took a step as he spoke. "You are Dr. Garaki, right?" Bringing his hand to his chest as if to bow, he said, "Yes, exactly. I introduce myself. I'm a doctor, researcher, biological supervisor, and, let's also say, Mr. All-for-One's longtime consultant." Midoriya paled when he heard his presentation, not understanding the reason, while the doctor chuckled when he saw his reaction. "Oh boy, don't be afraid. I'm not here to hurt you." His smile widened even before continuing, "I'm here to transform you." Midoriya tried to stay calm, but that doctor made his heart beat wildly every time he looked at him. "See, Izuku, you lived a life full of pain and abuse while everyone told you that you couldn't become anyone." While talking, he opened a briefcase that contained files, sterile syringes, a table, and several medical instruments. "I, on the other hand, am here to show you that you can become someone." As she listened to these words, a shiver ran down Midoriya's back. Garaki slowly took a digital pen and activated it. Izuku's profile appeared on the tablet. Midoriya Izuku. Preliminary analysis. Muscle mass below average. Chronic nutritional deficiencies. Potentially high reactive reflexes. Intense emotional stress. Latent psychological instability. Midoriya looked down while the doctor continued, "All-for-One gave me the order to transform you. And I never disappoint, my lord." He finished his speech approaching the boy until he was not even a step away, then with a disarming calm, Garaki put a hand on the shoulder of the green-haired young man. His grip was light, but it seemed impossible to get rid of it. "From now on I will be of your every breath. Your every failure and every progress. You won't have to think about anything. Just training and becoming stronger." Midoriya felt himself sink while Garaki was about to leave. It seemed to him that he was in front of a surgeon before an important surgery. Before leaving, the doctor spoke to Kurojairi. "Kurojairi, show the boy the room," after which he turned to Midoriya. "Then we will start with blood tests, metabolic revelations, and you will start your new diet. Get ready, Midoriya Izuku. Today you're a broken guy, but in a few months you'll be a weapon." After this sentence he walked away, walking out the door. Midoriya stared at the door with his heart beating wildly, realizing that what awaited him was much harder than what he imagined. "Young Midoriya, now you have met my dear friend Dr. Garaki. I hope you get along well with him. When I have time I will come to visit you and see how your training is going," said All-for-One before leaving. At that moment only Kurojairi and Midoriya were left in that room. Kurojairi turned to the boy. "Come on, let's go, young man. It will be hard, but I know you can do it," by starting to accompany Midoriya to his new room, from there to the next few months of training. They went down the stairs to the basement and walked down a corridor until they reached a side door in the long corridor. "This will be your room. It won't be the best, but after all you won't spend much time there given your training," he said in a gentle voice as he opened the door, showing the green-haired boy the room. "I'm going back to Shigaraki now. I'll see you when the teacher asks me to introduce myself. See you, Midoriya." Kurojairi greeted him before going with one of his warp. Midoriya didn't even have time to speak that Kurojairi had disappeared. He let out a sigh and decided to look at the room better. The light turned on as soon as he set foot in the room, showing that his room was quite spacious. But it was empty. As if it had no life, there was only a single bed with white sheets that looked a lot like a hospital bed. Then he noticed a monitor stuck on the wall which showed the temperature, sleep quality, breathing, stress levels, hydration, and below, a threatening writing. "Active supervision, Dr. Garaki." Midoriya then looked around the room. The walls were all gray metal that emanated loneliness and sadness, and the only other object in the room was a metal table with a chair in which he thought he should eat the food of his diet. Not knowing what to do while waiting for the doctor, he decided to get on the bed to lie down and reflect on the days and months to come. After an hour alone in that cell, Midoriya was starting to get sick. Just at that moment Dr. Garaki arrived. "Hi Izuku, Do you like your new room? It's a bit empty. Midoriya replied. It has what you need. In the phone you will be in here only during meals, and when you have to sleep, you will spend the rest outside this room to train. Garaki chuckled with a hint of amusement in his eyes. I imagined. I wanted to know what that monitor is for. Oh dear boy, that's what they need to control how you sleep, so that you have a 100% perfect physical and mental recovery. I understand, so even while I sleep you will control me, to which Garaki nodded amused. In addition, the lights are programmed to turn off completely at 2200 hours and turn on again at 5. This function cannot be modified. What if I can't sleep? Oh, you will sleep. Your body won't have much choice. Garaki smiled and then continued talking. Now look what I brought, he said, going to get something outside the room. He came back rolling his metal cart, with food on the top shelf under metal lids, while on the lower shelf it was full of test tubes and syringes. Well, Midoriya Izuku. Now your first day of training officially begins. The green-haired boy swallows while thinking about the hellish training that was about to begin. Come on, come here to the table. We have to start by putting on some mass and kg. And I have prepared a super high-protein diet especially for you, taking the data from your body. Garaki said this while raising the metal lids, to put in front of Midoriya the food he should eat. Steaming lean meat, brown rice, boiled eggs, sweet potatoes, enhanced milk, and a huge protein shaker and about 20 protein bars created by the doctor himself. Boy, you have 30 minutes to eat everything. Midoriya looked between the doctor and the meal in front of him in disbelief. All this? I don't think I can do it. It's too much food. Garaki's answer came sharply. No, there is no I don't think so. You have to do it. Your body compared to boys your age is light years behind. You are malnourished, you don't have a trained physique, and mostly you also lack hormonal stabilization. Right now you're just a problematic guy. And to become as the teacher wants or perfect, you have to eat. Perfect. Izuku said ironically, and began to eat with difficulty. In the middle of the meal he began to tremble because of so much food, but he refused to give up at the first obstacle and continued. He managed to finish the whole meal in exactly 30 minutes. In the end he was almost about to vomit, but he managed to resist. Garaki took notes without any mercy towards the boy. Great resistance and goodwill. Tomorrow we will increase the protein. Hearing the thought that the next day the proteins would increase even more, the sense of vomiting returned to him. Very good boy. Now sit on the bed. With a more delicate but not gentle tone of voice. Why now? What do we have to do? Boy, asking all these questions can make us waste precious time. Come on, go sit on the bed. Garaki answered, a little annoyed by the boy's questions. Midoriya agreed, not wanting to make the doctor angry and not create problems, and headed towards the bed, while Dr. Garaki prepared a series of vials on a metal tray. Their appearance was almost completely transparent except for the reflections they emitted. Some emitted a red reflection, others blue, and others still a pale green. Izuku swallowed. Doctor. What are they? They don't hurt, do they? Garaki turned around, smiling with that unnatural calm that gave chills. They are non-mutant muscle-strengthening serums. They will help you face the training and allow you to recover physically. Consider them as a push in the right direction. Obviously they won't allow you to become a giant, but they will help you grow faster. Garaki thus took the first vial in his hand. It was of a bluish color, and inserted it into a long and very low syringe and began to approach. Left arm, please. Midoriya brought his arm closer by lifting his sleeve, where there were still bruises and marks of old bites and cuts. Garaki watched them for a moment and then took the computer and started writing something. Your body is much more damaged than I expected. All for one was right to tell me that you didn't have an easy life, boy. This will hurt a little. As he began to penetrate the needle into the skin, he said, this will increase your strength and help you recover faster physically. Midoriya closed his eyes as the needle penetrated and released the liquid. At first he felt like the blood bubbling inside his veins, then a wave of almost unnatural force went through his entire arm. Aya. My chest hurts, gasped the green-haired boy. Perfect. It's absolutely normal, it means it works. The doctor replied with a sadistic smile. He waited a few seconds for the pain in the boy's body to disappear and began to prepare the second syringe. This time he took a red vial. This instead will stabilize your nervous system and prevent you from collapsing as a result of too much mental efforts, and in addition it will allow your body to assimilate protein from meals faster. Midoriya watched as the doctor inserted the vial inside the second syringe and waited anxiously for the needle to approach, preparing for the pain, without backing down, knowing that if he wanted to become strong he had to face that pain. This time when the needle sank, letting the liquid expand, the pain was stronger, like an electric shock under the skin. Midoriya grasped the edge of the bed with force. She felt her whole body vibrate, and her muscles contract and release themselves. Garaki observed everything with clinical calm. Excellent reaction. The serum is already having feedback on your body, allowing you to take the proteins you have previously eaten faster inside your body. Will I have to take them every day? The green-haired boy gasped while the pain was slowly leaving his body. Of course, boy, if you want to survive what you will have to get and what you will have to face. You need a new body, and the fastest way is to take these serums every day. While the green-haired boy thought that the vials to take were over, he noticed that Garaki took another needle in which he stuck a greenish vial this time. Again? He asked. While clicking the needle, Garaki replied, "Yes, this is the last of today. It will increase your pain threshold and decrease the risk of serious injury. It will allow you to suffer more damage during battles when necessary." Midoriya felt another burning blow, but this time along with the pain came a strange sensation of lightness and energy. She felt as if the muscles were reacting, as if they were waking up. Garaki carefully observed the reaction and the trembling of the boy's hands in front of him and spoke, "Don't worry, it's all normal. Yours is like reborn. Slowly he'll get used to it. Already from tomorrow it will be easier and you will feel less pain. Now recover for a moment and get dressed with training clothes. I'll wait for you out here." When Midoriya finished getting ready, he left the room and saw Garaki waiting patiently for him. "Follow me to the training room." Midoriya listened and followed the doctor to a giant door at the end of the corridor. Garaki approached the computer near the door and put a password that began to slowly open the door. The training room was huge, with advanced machinery and screens everywhere. There were tools for both strength work and those for lung work. Midoriya looked away from the machinery and began to see where Garaki had gone, and when he noticed him, he turned white. He was next to a treadmill that had a black oxygen mask with thick tubes and an oxygen regulator next to him. What is it? It's an oxygen reducer. It will limit your breathing to 30%. We want to boost your lung capacity as quickly as possible. Garaki said all this as if it were a very normal thing. 30%. But so I won't even be able to dash. Exactly, now put it on. He activated the mask with a button and let out a buzz. The boy took the mask in his hands. It was cold and heavy, and after a couple of deep breaths he put it on his face. The air suddenly became thick and scarce. Midoriya opened her eyes wide and instinctively brought her hands to her mouth. I can't breathe." "It's normal," said Garaki as he started the treadmill. "The first goal is 5 minutes of running without stopping. If you collapse earlier, the timer is reset." Midoriya started running on the black tape that ran under his feet. Just after 30 seconds his chest was already starting to burn. He tried to resist, but almost 2 minutes later he started panting. Stop him. Please. Stop him, I can't take it anymore." Garaki remained impassive without moving a finger and said a single word, "Continue." Midoriya began to bend forward, coughing. With the mask vibrating while looking for air, "I can't. Stop it." The knees gave way, and when the tape was about to take it away, Garaki finally pressed the button to stop the treadmill. When the green-haired boy stopped, he bent down coughing and fell to his knees, breathing as if he had been injured. "Great. Really great. Despite your past, you arrived at 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Another normal kid, if he would have faced what you faced, would have fainted after 15 seconds. This is a great start." Garaki said these words while taking notes. Midoriya looked at him like he was crazy. "Great start? But if I thought I was going to die. And this is only the first day. Great start a sheet," he thought while trying to recover. Not even time to rest properly that Garaki spoke immediately. "Do it again until you get to 5 minutes. And reactivated the treadmill. Midoriya closed her eyes and started running again. When he finally reached 5 minutes, Izuku fell to the ground exhausted. But Garaki didn't even give him time to rest. Stand up, come on. Now we have to move on to force. As he walked towards the structure of the tractions, today we test the limits of your body, from tomorrow we begin to overcome them. Izuku grabbed the bar for the tractions. The skin of the hands pulled and burned. He began to lift his own weight. At the 5th movement the arms began to tremble and he fell. Standard training involves at least 20 tractions. Tomorrow you will try to get past at least 10. Every day a step. Midoriya got up staggering. After the tractions it was the turn of the weights. Garaki made him start from the flat bench where the best Midoriya managed to do were 3 sets of 5 repetitions with only the 10 kilograms bar, after which he went to the biceps and shoulders. For the biceps it started with the 6 kilograms dumbbells, barely arriving at the 3 sets of 8 repetitions for the biceps, and then moved on to the 4 kilograms dumbbells with 2 sets of 6 repetitions for the lateral lifts. Then he touched his legs with squats with a normal 10 kilograms barbell on his shoulders, with which he managed to get to 4 sets of 5 repetitions, and finally completed the training in the gym with free body abs with 3 sets of 15 repetitions. After seeing the boy train, Garaki marked everyone on the thoughts on the tablet. The annotations he would write on the tablet: very low base force, fast fatigue but surprisingly fast recovery, effect compatible with childhood trauma plus high mental resilience. Sizable potential once the serums are applied. Minimal weights for now, the risk of fracture is high. Now the last part of this afternoon, boy. It's time for parkour. Garaki pointed to a completely different room, such as a small maze of platforms, walls, bars, and suspended planks. You'll have to cross the path without making noise. But I have no balance and I'm not able to move without making noise. Midoriya said while staring at him incredulously. And that's why we're training you, to make you learn and grow. Garaki said as he let out a robot and said, this one here hears every sound above 45 decibels, and will trigger an alarm. Every bolt that starts the alarm you'll have to start from 0. Izuku took a first step. A table creaked under his foot and the room was filled with an alarm sound. Garaki sighed. It starts again. Izuku tried again, but there were only other noises and other failures. After an hour his legs began to tremble as if they were made of glass. Garaki watched him in silence. Then he bent down for the first time. His voice didn't seem cold. She seemed evaluative. You lasted longer than I thought, Midoriya. Your body is not strong. But your will. That one, yes. Then he took a break and resumed speaking. For this afternoon we are done, go rest, you have 1 hour, then I will come back with dinner and we will do the training again. It will be like this for the next 4 months. Prepare both mentally and physically. Prepare mind and body. This is just the beginning. At the end of the months we will see the difference between your first training and the last. Having said that, Garaki went out to his lab while Midoriya headed to his room to rest. At least for a miserable hour. Izuku got out of bed as soon as the light turned on and a thought was pounding in his head. This is the last day of the 4 months of strength training. Today, as Garaki told me yesterday, the teacher will come with Kurogiri to check my current level and my growth. Unfortunately, Tamura is on a mission. He will not see my physical development and strength yet. With these thoughts he prepared himself while waiting to face the day. The door of the room opened and Garaki entered. Boy, go change, brush your teeth and get dressed. Mr. All for One is coming with Kurogiri. He will be here soon. He wants to see your results. Today you will not face training, but you will only listen while I tell All for One the progress you have made. Doing as Dr. Midoriya said, he went to the bathroom. As soon as he arrived in the bathroom he rinsed his face and began to brush his teeth. After washing and rinsing them he looked at his teeth while inside himself he thought, thanks to the serums my teeth are healthy as they used to be and I don't know any more chipped and ruined. But these scars don't go away. Now they will remain a part of me forever. While he blended all this in his mind he tightened all the scars on his body, dwelling on the most painful one, the word Deku on his chest. Since he arrived there his nightmares on the abuses suffered had decreased a lot. However, a few nights it all came back to his mind and he remembered the only person who had always stayed by his side. His mother had no more news of her and how she was doing. Then she shook, taking all those thoughts out of her mind and prepared to go meet All for One. As he walked towards his room, he heard voices coming from inside, realizing that Kurogi and the master had arrived, thus preparing to discover his actual improvements and how his master would react, and entered. "Oh, hello, young Midoriya. I see you're pretty fit compared to when we said goodbye last time." "Hi, teacher. Yes, I feel much better than 4 months ago," replied the green-haired boy. "Very well. I'm curious to see if you've improved as I hoped." And then he turned to Dr. Garaki. "Doctor, give me your report on the improvements made by the boy in these 4 months." "Certainly, sir." Garaki replied while opening the computer ready to expose the report made. So, as soon as he arrived, the boy was 135 centimeters tall and weighed barely 30 kilograms. Now, after 4 months, thanks to training and serums, he became 10 centimeters taller and gained 20 kilograms, reaching a total of 145 ck and 50 kilograms. His muscle mass was very low at the beginning. Now he has received an increase of 120%. He paused, trying to understand what All for One thought of the behaviors he had, but he couldn't understand much, so he continued. At the beginning of physical training, his levels were the following: resistance treadmill with 30% oxygen resisted between 2 and 5 minutes barely. Tractions 1 set of 5 uncontrolled repetitions and with a lot of imbalance. Flat bench 3 sets of 5 repetitions with only the 10 kilograms bar with a lot of effort. Squat 4 sets of 5 repetitions with 10 kilograms barbell. Abdominals only with free body 3 sets of 15 repetitions. Biceps barely reached the 3 sets of 8 repetitions with 6 kilograms dumbbells, and shoulders 2 sets of 6 repetitions with 4 kilograms. Now let's move on to stealth. At the beginning of his parkour training, he was careless. He was stumbling and always making noise, not being able to resist 1 minute even once in 2 hours without being heard or seen. Garaki stopped to take a breath before saying the level the boy had reached after 4 months of hard training. After these 4 months, his improvements are as follows. Resistance with a mask with 30% oxygen between 50 and 55 minutes. So he had an increase in pulmonary capacity of 45%. Then the tractions 4 sets of 15 repetitions performed perfectly without the lack of initial balance. Flat bench 3 sets of 5 repetitions with 60 kilograms between bar and discs. Squat 4 sets of 8 repetitions with 45 kilograms. Abdominals 3 sets of 50 repetitions with weight of 10 kilograms in the hands. Biceps 3 sets of 8 repetitions with 14 kilograms. Lateral lifts instead 3 sets of 10 repetitions with 10 kilograms. Finally, in stealth is the point where the boy shines the most of all. He has no problems in not being hurt. He manages to complete more than 5 courses of 50 meters without making the slightest noise. His reflexes have refined, becoming those of a predator. His physique has really improved over the months. "I can say that with this I ended my relationship," concluded Garaki, who every time he pronounced Midoriya's improvements took breaks to channel the information into the minds of those present. "Great. Really great. You exceeded all my expectations, young man." "Great job too, Dr. Garaki," said All for One, congratulating the boy and the doctor. "Truly incredible, Midoriya. I certainly didn't expect this progress," said Kurogi. All those compliments embarrassed the green-haired boy, who didn't imagine that he had had such a good improvement as to receive all those compliments. "Thank you. But it's mainly thanks to the doctor who, despite my complaints about the pain, still made me train. Now, young Midoriya, there's no need to be so good. Accept these compliments and enjoy this day. Use it entirely to rest. Tomorrow you will start training mentally and emotionally with Kurogi and me to be able to better manage your emotions. See you tomorrow. Thanks. Garaki is always ready for anything. Goodbye." And so All for One left with Kurogi, leaving the doctor and the boy there. "Well, boy, get ready. The challenges will still be many for you. For any need that your physical needs, just come by and I'll give you a hand." "See you," said goodbye to the doctor as he walked with his slow and calm step towards the door. As soon as Garaki left, Midoriya threw herself on the bed, deciding to take a well-deserved rest before the start of training with Kurogi and All for One. "Tomorrow we will start a new training cycle. It will be hard, but I have already improved a lot. I will just have to resist and continue training." And with these thoughts in my head, she began to surrender to sleep and fell asleep. The light suddenly turned on, waking up Midoriya, who woke up annoyed. putting his hands on his eyes. And it's already morning? Before he could turn on the other side of the bed, a deep voice filled the room. Yes, young man. And it's also time to start the second phase of your training. Midoriya jumped up from the bed with his eyes still tarnished by sleep. In front of him, leaning against the metal wall of the room, there was All For One, wearing his black mask. Next to him was Kurogiri, who watched the scene in silence. Master, greeted Midoriya. You enjoyed the day of rest, you slept completely all day. He chuckled with his disturbing laugh. All For One. Oh, I didn't realize I slept all that time, said the green-haired boy, embarrassed. Don't worry, young man, that's fine. You've given your mind and body time to regenerate completely. Now we'll start training your mind. So you can't be afraid anymore and exploit your traumas as weapons. Okay, master, but what will this training consist of? Midoriya asked anxiously. Young man, most likely you won't like this training very much, but it's necessary. Before continuing, All For One checked Midoriya's face, trying to understand his emotions. The anxiety inside Midoriya rose to hear his master say that he won't like the training, and waited in silence for All For One to continue. Every day from today to the next 4 months you will have to face 6 hours in a soundproof room in which there is no light, no sound, and no distraction. His voice remained firm and continued. The goal is that you will be able to resist for at least 6 hours a day, staying alone with yourself without any problem. 6 hours. Alone in the dark? Midoriya asked doubtfully. Yes, exactly. But this way I'll go crazy. My thoughts will take over, cried the green-haired boy. Very likely. However, this is precisely the point. The goal of making you face this is that you will have to learn to control your heartbeat. You will have to learn to remain lucid in darkness and loneliness, and you must learn to listen to your mind and your thoughts without losing control, said All For One without hesitation. Okay, master. Then what else will I have to do? Midoriya asked, trying to look confident. To that answer, All For One was satisfied and answered the boy's question. Then you will go to eat to recover your energy. And after, you and Kurogiri will go to a lonely room where he will create illusions of your past traumas. They will not be real, but they will seem so to you. You will face past bullying, loneliness, abuse, and also the abandonment of your father. Midoriya turned pale as he felt a shiver run down his back. How do you know all this? He asked, trembling at the mere thought of having to face his traumas again. Oh, young man, I have more quirks, remember? And one of these allows me to look at people's memories. He replied without waiting for All For One. I had to imagine it. Don't worry, young man. After you have faced the illusions created by Kurogiri, you will have the last part of this training, and I will take care of it. I will teach you how to manage emotions and how to increase or decrease them at will. At the end of this training, the child Midoriya Izuku who gives in to his own emotions will no longer exist. And in front of those memories you will never tremble again, said All For One in a firm voice. Midoriya breathed while channeling all that information, and with a trembling voice he replied, preparing for what he had to face. Okay, I'm ready. I've come this far now, I won't back down. That's exactly what I wanted to hear you say. Now follow us, said the master. Midoriya began to follow the master and Kurogiri, who during the entire conversation had remained silent to watch the scene without ever intervening, followed them until the two stopped in front of a thick black door. In front of it, Midoriya felt a shiver run all over his back. All For One pointed to the door. This is the soundproof room where you will have to learn to face yourself and your mind. As he spoke, the door made a slight mechanical click and began to open. Go inside and show how much you are worth. Midoriya fixed the inside of the room. It was spacious, but empty. It had absolutely nothing inside, only the walls black as pitch on the sides and nothing else inside. He took a breath and took a step forward, entering the room. See you later, master. The door behind him didn't make any noise as it closed. The light went out without any warning, and only a green-haired boy remained in the middle of the room in the dark with himself alone. Midoriya Izuku remained motionless, with labored breathing. The darkness was total, as if the eyes no longer existed. Breathe. Calm down, he murmured, but you don't hear any echo, only silence. At first he tried to stay calm, remembering Garaki's teachings during the measurements, that is, inhaling slowly and exhaling even more slowly. 1, 2, 3, After what seemed to him a few minutes, he began to feel his body begin to react to anxiety. His heart will speed up. Thump. Thump. Too strong. Too close. Midoriya brought a hand to his chest as if he could stop him, but his heartbeat didn't listen and didn't adjust. I'm fine. I'm fine. There's nothing. Calm down. He began to think to himself, trying to calm down. But silence began to weigh, not as a void but rather as a presence, and in his mind the thoughts began to follow one after the other in his mind. And if they abandoned me here? What if I'm failing? His breathing became irregular, his chest seemed as if he was tightening. No. I can't let myself be defeated like this by my thoughts, he whispered, leaning slightly forward. He tried to sit down but his legs trembled, and in his moments some memories came back with the voices of his bullies tormenting him. You're useless. Because you were born you are useless. Poor your mother having to raise a monster without powers like you all alone. Always remember what your place is, Deku. Midoriya's heart jumped. Stop please. Leave me alone. Panic overwhelmed him, his breath began to break, his hands were looking for something to hold on to in the darkness. I can't. His voice trembled like that of the children. His legs gave way and he fell to his knees, his chest burned and his head was spinning. He felt the blood pulsating in his ears. I can't take it anymore, I want to go out. I want all this to end. I want my mother back. Those thoughts hit him like a punch. Midoriya bent over himself, his arms around his body and cried, without even being able to hear her tears because of the soundproof room. Time passed for what seemed like hours for Midoriya, who was slowly losing the light of reason. And fainted. He was awakened by the light that came from the opening of the door that hit him straight in the face. He blinked his eyelids, disoriented with still his breathing irregularly. All for One watched him from the door. Excellent resistance. I didn't even think you would last more than 30 minutes today. Instead you wonderfully surprised me, you collapsed after 2 hours and 37 minutes. Excellent result, young man. Yes, he complimented him in a neutral voice. But the green-haired boy didn't answer. He didn't have the strength, he was devastated by what he had to face in that DMN room. Young man, come on. Go stock up by eating later, Kurogiri will take care of you with his illusions. Keep it up. And having said that, he left the boy there alone in the room, who slowly composed himself and went to his rooms to eat. Midoriya had just finished eating and had rested a bit, getting ready for the next training with Kurogiri, that the latter entered through the door. Midoriya, come on, follow me now, we have to take care of training with illusions. I hope you have recovered and you are ready to face some of your traumas. Wait. Let's say yes, Kurogiri. Midoriya replied tremblingly, certainly not wanting to face his past abuses and traumas again. Don't worry, Midoriya, I know it's difficult, but as the master said, unfortunately it's necessary. I'm sure that as the days go by you'll be able to face everything without problems. Let's go. Kurogiri replied, basically understanding the difficulties that the boy in front of him had to face, and began to take her to another room. Midoriya and Kurogiri arrived in front of a room with a completely white door that Kurogiri opened by entering the code on the computer next to the entrance. Midoriya followed Kurogiri inside. The room was different from the soundproofed one he had to face before, in some ways even worse. It was always spacious and empty like the previous room, only that instead of the pitch-black walls, the walls here were mesmerizing white. Today you will only face an illusion, then as the days go by we will increase based on your improvements. Are you ready, young Midoriya? Kurogiri asked, pulling the boy out of his thoughts. Oh yes, I'm ready, he replied with his breath that slowly broke. Kurogiri nodded and activated his quirk in order to create the illusion. A moment before the room was bare, then suddenly Midoriya found herself in her house. A little Midoriya came back from home with his mother in tow. Midoriya immediately understood what day it was, noticing the look of his mother and himself younger. It was a memory of him at 4 years old. The last day he saw his father in his life. I don't want to face it again, whispered Midoriya. But without being able to do anything, he was forced to relive that moment. Inko, are you back with that little monster? Shouted a figure from the hall. Hisashi, forget our son, he's not a little monster, replied Inko, trying to defend his little child. Hisashi, hearing those words, went towards the entrance and started shouting at the two who had just returned. Our son? That monster without quirk can't be my son. He's disgusting, he only knows how to cry, he's a constant lament. If he had never been born it would have been good for all of us. Sorry Dad. I didn't mean to be like that, I'm sorry, said the 4-year-old Midoriya with an apologetic tone and full of guilt. Oh Izuku, you don't have to apologize, don't listen to your pad dash. But before she could finish she was pushed away by Hisashi. Little monster, don't you dare apologize, you're just a disgrace, since you were born nothing has gone in the right direction. Hisashi turned to the green-haired child with an acid tone full of hatred. He took the little 4-year-old Midoriya by the hair and threw him towards the living room in front of the sofa, and without listening to his own screams he began to untie the belt to be able to punish him for his birth by whipping him. And no, please Dad. Forgive me. I'll make it up to you, but please don't hurt me, cried the child. Hisashi, stop, don't touch him. Leave Izuku alone. Inko shouted. But those screams and requests for forgiveness did not reach Hisashi, who began to hit Izuku on the back with the belt. Enjoying his son's screams, Inko threw herself in the middle but was rejected by a slap from Hisashi. Stop, leave him alone, shouted Inko. Shut up. Don't get in the mess, I'm just teaching this monster a lesson. Dad, please. You hurt me. But Izuku's tears only increased the heat of Hisashi's beatings. That violence lasted half an hour with a small Izuku full of blood on his back due to the strappings suffered. Enough, you made me tired. You are my downfall and this stupid brat. You ruined my life, I'm leaving. Hisashi yelled as he decided to leave and abandon what he thought had ruined his life. Neither Inko nor little Izuku were worried that Hisashi had left. Don't worry, my little one is gone, he will never hurt you again. I'm sorry Izuku, you didn't have to go through all this. Inko cried when she saw the pain and tears of her son. It doesn't matter Mom, it's not your fault. I love you, thank you for staying by my side. Little Midoriya exhaled before collapsing and fainting. At that moment the illusion ended. Midoriya had completely relived those scenes with a pain continued to the heart as he saw his father beating him and treating both him and his mother with contempt. His breathing was labored and his face was covered with tears as he tried to remove those images from the test. Go away, you are not my father, go away. I hate you, I hate you. He started the sentence as a whisper and then ended it with a scream full of hatred. Calm down, young man. Calm down, Midoriya, everything is fine, it was an illusion, everything is fine. Kurogiri was talking, who was trying to calm the green-haired boy. Kurogiri. I'm sorry I got carried away. I couldn't resist. I collapsed, it was stronger than me. Midoriya said sadly because he had completely failed to resist the illusion. Don't worry, it's normal at the beginning to govern this way, you're training for this very reason. Take the necessary time and get back together and let's go to the teacher who is waiting for you for the training part with him. Midoriya took deep breaths and with difficulty got up while his mind kept pounding continuously for the trauma that had just passed, and began to follow Kurogiri to their master. Midoriya had followed Kurogiri deep into the basement until he found himself in front of the third and last door he was supposed to go through. The door opened silently, showing inside a bare room like the previous ones, within the center sitting on an all-for-one chair waiting for him. The room was different from the others. It was a neutral room with opaque gray walls, soft light that did not blind you. It was an environment designed exactly for the training that had to follow. Thanks Kurogiri, you can go, leave us alone. Kurogiri listened to what his master said and left the two alone, and all for one started talking again. Then Midoriya, come here, sit down, he said, pointing to the chair in front of him. All right, master. As soon as Midoriya sat down, all for one watched him for a few seconds in silence and spoke. So, your heartbeat is still too fast. You faced the room and collapsed after 2 hours and 37 minutes. You faced one of your past traumas and you lost control. Midoriya swallowed. I'm sorry. The voice of all for one stopped him immediately. No, don't apologize, excuses are useless. I'm not disappointed in you. Because despite everything you didn't run away and you stayed there trying to fight. His voice was firm as he said all this. So I didn't fail? The green-haired boy asked hopefully. Not at all, young Midoriya. I expected you to have difficulties at the beginning, that's exactly what training is for. It's good to improve you. Midoriya was happy to hear these words from his master and waited anxiously to know how he would master him to manage his emotions. So, Midoriya Izuku, tell me. What did you feel when you saw your father again? Midoriya's heart had a gasp. The images returned to press in his mind. His voice, the screams towards him and his mother and the desperate screams of his mother in an attempt to defend him. My hands tightened on his knees and I said, fear. But also hate. All for one nodded, two primary emotions. However, one makes you weak and fragile while the other makes you powerful. Midoriya listened carefully to every single word. How will you teach me to control these emotions? Very well, I see you can't wait to start. Then close your eyes and think back to your father's memory. Midoriya opened his eyes wide in fear. No. Do as I tell you, trust me. All for one's voice was calm. Manipulative to be able to get into the heart and mind of the green-haired boy to calm him down. Midoriya did as his teacher told him and thought back to his father's memory. Slowly his face and voice came back vivid in his head. Raven, calm down, don't push back, don't scream and don't cry. The memory burned in the boy's mind. But for the first time he was not completely overwhelmed by the memory. The tears rose but did not fall. His breathing was slowly breaking but he was not panicking. It lasted a few seconds but in the end it collapsed anyway. His body bent forward and a sob escaped from his throat. All for one stayed there without consoling him, waiting for him to calm down on his own. When Midoriya calmed down and caught his breath, all for one spoke. 7 seconds. You kept control for 7 seconds. Tomorrow they will. Already increase, they will become 8 then 9 and so on until he always has control of your emotions. All right, master. Midoriya said with difficulty because of his breath. All for one was leaving and just before passing through the door. Remember, I wouldn't become strong because you will stop feeling emotions. But because you will learn to command them and not them to command you. Now rest, tomorrow you will have to face everything again. After saying that he left the room. The door closed, leaving Midoriya in there alone, exhausted but for the first time. He was not completely at the mercy of himself and his memories. And with this little new awareness he went to his room to rest. The months of mental training passed very slowly and were practically hell for Midoriya since at first he struggled to mentally manage all those challenges. He alternated days in which he resisted for longer and days in which after not even an hour he already collapsed. But after these initial difficulties he slowly began to improve. In the soundproofed room initially he almost always fainted after just 2 or 3 hours, but after a couple of months he began to learn to manage the heartbeat better and to live with loneliness and his thoughts, until he reached the end of the training in which the heartbeat is completely under his control and the thoughts can no longer take over. The illusions for Midoriya Izuku were the most difficult part of his training. At the beginning he relived his traumas with constant screams, crying and constant loss of control. With the passage of time he was able to control the panic better, always with difficulty, but at the end of his training, despite the memories hurt him, they can no longer break it and face his memories without loss of control. The training for the control of emotions with All for One is the one that went best of all. Already after a month he was able to control his emotions almost completely and he could recognize them perfectly without any problem. At the end of his training he manages to turn on and off his emotions without any problem and he manages to stay cool in any moment of difficulty. All for One looked very amazed at the results that the green-haired boy had obtained. Kurogiri, the boy. He's ready. He's more than ready to face the survival test on the island of Kurashima. Every workout he's faced has exceeded my expectations both physically and mentally, said All for One. Yes, master, I too was amazed by his every improvement. He has a truly enviable determination. If I think back to the first day he faced illusions and I see him again now, I am incredulous of how much he has improved. All for One nodded. So it's time to tell him the last test before receiving the quirk. But first I have to ask you if you have any news of how Tamura's recruitment is going. I haven't had the opportunity to get in touch with him in these 4 months. It's going well. As you asked, you're recruiting a lot of little criminals willing to follow us. By doing so we can make the heroes start to tear. Great. Very good. Then I'll give you a task. Go to Tamura and stay by his side and give him a hand. In a week he'll come back here with him, so he'll watch Midoriya's test on the island with us. Go, I'll take care of it on my own to talk to young Midoriya. Okay, master, as you wish, see you in a week. Having said that, he left, leaving All for One there alone. He started in Midoriya's rooms to be able to tell him that he had also passed the second phase of training. As soon as he entered the room, he saw a Midoriya sitting at the bed waiting for him. Hello, master, I was waiting for you. The first to speak was Midoriya. Hello, young man. I guess you know why I'm here. I'm waiting for a sign to see if he knew, and when he received it he continued, very good. I must say that you surprised me once again with your mental training. It went even better than the physical one. You are no longer a fragile child at the mercy of his emotions. You are able to manage your emotions and dominate them. Midoriya listened to every single word of his master with pride, realizing by himself his incredible improvements. Now I'm sure you're ready for the last test without receiving your quirk. I don't know if you know this place, the island of Kurashima. The green-haired boy looked at him confused, having never heard of this place, and asked, Excuse me, master. I've never heard of this island. What would it be about? I imagine, young man. It's an island outside the maps. Forgotten by the world. It's an island composed entirely of a dense and dark jungle. It presents animals that have changed from experimental quirks and abandoned former criminals as scraps still alive. You will have to survive on this island for 30 days, demonstrating your improvements. And to have the cold blood to kill someone in case of need. And if you manage to do all this, you will be ready to receive the quirk I have in store for you. He said with a firm and cold voice. All for one. Okay, master. But 2 questions. When will I have to start this test? And how will I get there? You will have 1 week to rest and prepare for this test. I think that with your improvements you will be able to overcome this challenge. While for your second question, Kurogyari will open a warp for the island and close it immediately, and it will be reopened only at the end of the 30 days. Get ready, Midoriya, and prove your value. Now I'm going because I have a commitment to conclude. See you in a week, young man. Concluded, leaving All for One. Midoriya was lost in his thoughts while thinking about the last test. I only have this survival test left. And then I will finally get my quirk. Since my first day of training I have really improved a lot. I will be ready. I will certainly not stop now. And with those thoughts in mind, he decided to start thinking about how best to face those 30 days on such a dangerous island. There was 1 night left at the beginning of the 30 days on the island of Kurashima for Midoriya Izuku. Midoriya Izuku didn't sleep much that night. Not because he was afraid, and not even because anxiety was devouring him, but only because he was lost in his thoughts, realizing that silence and loneliness no longer scratched him. Once in this silence I would have started to hear the voices of my bullies. Now instead my thoughts are lucid and orderly. Tomorrow I will start my survival challenge, and it is the most important phase of my entire training. I will not have any help. I will have to get by with my own strength. The green-haired boy thought in the dark. He closed his eyes and tried to imagine the island, a dense and humid jungle, shadows and monsters among the trees, and thousands of other dangers. At this imagination the chest and heart tightened for a second, and he felt an emotion that he had often felt in his life. The fear. However, this time he did not reject it and did as his teacher had taught him. He checked it and immediately eliminated it from his mind. After which he opened his eyes. I am ready. I will prove my worth from tomorrow, he murmured to himself, as a realization. And slowly he let himself go to sleep and fell asleep. Midoriya woke up sleepy with voices talking in his room. With his eyes still tarnished by sleep he looked up and noticed All for One, Kurogyari and Shigaraki there waiting for him to wake up. Shigaraki was the first to notice his awakening and spoke. Izuku, good morning. You finally woke up. It's been 8 months since I saw you. You've changed a lot. Before you were a kid, now you look much older. Shigaraki said, every word full of enthusiasm to see his friend again after so long. Oh. Hi Tamura, I didn't expect you to come too to attend the last phase of my training. I'm glad you came. I missed you a little in these 8 months, said Midoriya, throwing a provocative smile at his friend, who burst into laughter. My boys. Calm down. Young Midoriya, I see that you are already loaded and full of energy, said All for One. Yes, master, I can't wait to start my last test so I can prove my worth and get my quirk. Very well. Then Kurogyri immediately open a warp so that young Midoriya can start his last challenge as soon as possible, said All for One in a calm and disturbing voice. All right, master. Kurogyri immediately executed his master's orders and opened a warp. Young Midoriya, before you cross the warp and start the challenge, I would like to warn you and prepare you for some things. All for One took a break before continuing. On Kurashima there will be no rules. There on that island the law of the strongest who is worthy survives, who is not perishes. Remember, there you will not be Midoriya Izuku, you will be just a prey in a dangerous and hostile environment. Your only goal is to survive in any way. Good luck, young man. Finished All for One. Midoriya could understand, despite the black mask that covered All for One's face, he could understand that his gaze was directed towards him in an analytical way. Yes, I understand, master. Don't worry, I won't disappoint you. Having said that, Midoriya headed towards the warp, taking several breaths, remembering the lessons to control anxiety. After being able to calm his heartbeat and control his anxiety, he crossed the warp ready to face that survival challenge. Midoriya arrived at the island of Kurashima. As soon as he set foot on the island, the warp behind him closed with a dry sound. The world seemed to turn upside down. The air suddenly changed and became hotter and wetter, with a strong smell of wet earth, rotten leaves, and a metallic smell that pinched his nose. Midoriya staggered forward. The ground under his feet was completely different from the smooth one of the bases where he trained. It was uneven. In front of him stretched the island of Kurashima, a jungle with gigantic trees that rose towards the sky like black columns. The intertwined branches almost completely blocked the sunlight. Thick lianas hung from the branches like motionless snakes, and among the vegetation Midoriya noticed shadows moving. Midoriya stood still, listening to every single noise, inhaled slowly through his nose, held his breath for a moment, then exhaled slowly from his mouth. Unknown environment, limited visibility, analyzed everything exactly as All for One had taught him. A sudden buzz made him stiffen. An insect as big as his forearm flew in front of his face. His eyes shone with an unnatural light. Midoriya took a step back, while the insect let out a shrill ness and walked away among the trees. Midoriya clenched his fists. Quirk changed exactly as the master had said. The awareness hit him immediately. In that island nothing was normal. Every plant or animal could be a threat. He took a step forward and felt the ground give way slightly under his weight. Midoriya stopped to think. If I make noise, they will notice me. I must first find a safe place to take refuge for now. He began to move slowly in the forest, carefully choosing where to put his feet, avoiding the dry branches so as not to make noise and not to show his presence. The first day had just begun, and the island behind him seemed to be watching him and already putting him to the test. The jungle seemed to never end as he carefully walked every step in search of a place to take refuge for now. He stopped behind a massive trunk and tensed his ear. The sounds were everywhere, but by concentrating he managed to distinguish them, between the rustle of insects, the distant sound of water, and then footsteps. Midoriya stiffened. They were not heavy steps like those of a huge creature and not even light like those of small animals. They were irregular, and the boy understood that they were human steps. He immediately lowered the body, crawling between the roots until he found shelter behind a moss-covered rock formation. Two figures emerged among the vegetation. They were two men with worn clothes. They were both armed in an improvised way. One who had a rusty axe instead of his arm, while the other had an unnaturally long arm, most likely deformed by an unstable quirk. Midoriya watched them without being noticed while his thoughts ran while he studied them. Looking at them, they are abandoned criminals. I can't fight them now. It's better to fight them later when it will be extremely necessary on the island. For now I have to find a shelter. He waited for the footsteps to move away and came out of his hiding place and began to move again in search of a temporary shelter. After about an hour, the ground began to rise slightly, while the vegetation became denser, but Midoriya noticed a rocky ledge. The green-haired boy approached cautiously. The rock formed a natural indent, not deep but sufficient to be able to protect him from possible rain and wind. He noticed that in front of this natural indentation there were thick shrubs that he could use to cover the entrance, and above it there was an intertwining of roots and stones that made it difficult to see from the outside. He knelt down and looked for some trace to understand if any animal or someone had been there recently. Very well, no sign of living presence recently. It's perfect, I'll use this place as a temporary refuge. Now I just need to camouflage it to prevent anyone from discovering it, he murmured among himself. He picked up some wide leaves with broken branches, placing them carefully in front of the entrance to minimize it, leaving a space open only to be able to see the outside. He sat inside when the sun had set and leaned his back against the cold stone. For the first time since arriving on the island, he allowed himself to stop. Very well, the first day has practically passed. I didn't have to make any useless efforts and I didn't waste my energy already fighting on the first day. Tomorrow I'll have to hunt something to be able to eat and I'll have to find drinking water. Midoriya thought out loud. Slowly he decided to rest a bit while remaining vigilant in case something happened. During the night, Midoriya's rest was interrupted several times by continuous rustles of small animals moving near his shelter. Every time the boy opened his eyes, held his breath and listened carefully, ready to react. Only after making sure that they were harmless creatures and that they had moved away, he allowed himself a few moments of rest again, still keeping his senses alert and preparing his mind for the next day. Meanwhile, all for one, Kurojirai and Shigaraki observed every single move of Midoriya thanks to a drone created by Dr. Garaki that allowed them to control every single area of the island without being noticed. Shigaraki looked at the screen with a half smile. Not bad, Izuku, you have improved a lot. Kurojirai tilted his head slightly. The boy became much more intelligent and began to show excellent self-control in decisive moments. Great. Really excellent, young Midoriya. You faced the first day perfectly, giving priority to essential things without wasting unnecessary energy. I'm curious how you'll behave later. But you've already improved a lot. You're no longer the scared kid of 8 months ago. Let's see if you'll be able to maintain this level or you'll be broken from the island. All for one thought, with a disturbing smile printed on his face, curious to find out how Midoriya would go on the island. Dawn slowly arrived on the island of Kurashima. It wasn't the light that woke Midoriya but the change of air. The humidity seemed to have become even heavier, sticking to the skin like a second skin. A light wind crossed the jungle, moving the leaves and sliding the drops of water over the branches. Midoriya opened his eyes suddenly. For a moment he remained motionless with his body tense. His gaze immediately moved towards the camouflaged entrance of the shelter in search of possible suspicious movements. When he made sure there was nothing, he got up slowly, avoiding making noise, and looked out through the space he had left between the leaves and branches at the entrance. He noticed that some glimmer of light was now beginning to cut the jungle into some golden beam. The shadows of the night were retreating, but it seemed that there on the island of Kurashima those shadows never left completely. His stomach began to contract due to hunger and thirst. For a moment the boy ignored that feeling by focusing on the environment. In his mind, he began to create the plan to face the second day. First, find some water. Then I have to look for a way to create some weapons and find an animal that I can use to feed me. And find branches and stones to light a fire. With these thoughts he slowly came out of the shelter, stopping to observe the ground. He noticed small footprints, small animals. No big predators. I've been lucky for now. He straightened up, barely stretching the sore muscles, which despite the hard ground and the fragmented sleep responded very well, and realized that his training had paid off. Midoriya looked up at the crowns of the trees. She heard the sound of running water somewhere in the distance. His eyes shone with determination. The second day has just begun. I must not underestimate this place, the green-haired boy whispered in a low voice. And he began to move through the vegetation, leaving behind his temporary refuge as he went in search of water, with the island of Kurashima watching him and preparing to test him. Midoriya advanced through the vegetation with a light step, following the distant sound of the water. Every movement perfectly calculated, his eyes and ears were continuously on the lookout, analyzing any possible threat. After a few minutes he finally reached a small stream of water that flowed between dark stones and intertwined roots. The water on the surface was clear, but the reflection of the jungle and the shadows of the stones forced him to move with extreme caution. He could not afford to make mistakes. The green-haired boy crouched behind a bush, studying the current, calculating every slightest gesture, knowing that the slightest noise would attract unwanted attention. He remembered the observation and survival techniques he had studied: rapid analysis of the environment, identification of hazards, planning of actions. With patience, he found large waxy leaves and used them to create an improvised container. With extreme precision, immerse the container in water, avoiding getting wet or disturbing the current. The small overflow of leaf was enough to collect enough water to be able to drink it safely. Midoriya lifted the leaf to his lips and drank slowly. The thirst gradually decreased and slowly he felt his body invigorate. Well, I got the water, now I have to focus on the next step. Get me food, he murmured in a low voice as he checked the place around him. After making sure that there was no one to observe him, he walked away from the stream without any obvious traces, ready to head towards his next goal, to get a weapon and food. As he advanced, his gaze no longer observed the jungle as a hostile place but as a resource. Anything he would find could be useful to him. I need a fast weapon to use, simple and silent, he thought as he crouched near a fallen tree. The trunk was still hard and flexible enough. It broke a segment just over a meter long, enough to keep the prey away and not too much to be cumbersome. He tested its weight, resistance and balance by shaking it and bending it in his arms and thought, it's okay. This can be fine. With a harder stone found near a rock face, he began to slowly work the end of the stick. He tried to create a fairly robust, slightly flattened tip that would be able to penetrate without breaking. When the shape was satisfactory, he picked up some dark resin that flowed from a tree not far away and applied it to the tip, letting it partially dry. Then he tightly wrapped vegetable fibers and strips of bark around the base, reinforcing it with multiple knots. To the eye it was not very elegant but it was solid. A real hunting spear. After creating his weapon, Midoriya started moving again, following the sthis found on the ground. Midoriya crouched down to study the footprints. They were wide with blunt nails, similar to wild boars but bigger, he thought. A little further on he caught a glimpse of movement. 3 creatures slowly emerged among the trees. Were 2 massive animals, almost as tall as him, with robust bodies, thick skin and dark spots that ran all over his back, and horns that sprouted from his mouth. They were apparently herbivorous mutant beasts. Midoriya hid behind a tree, observing the behavior of the 2 animals. They moved cautiously but did not seem particularly aggressive. Midoriya waited for the right moment to make his move. After a few minutes the 2 animals parted to dig into the ground with his mutt, and the boy with straight hair understood that that was his moment. He squeezed the spear, feeling his heartbeat accelerate for a moment before being able to regain control. His body lowered, his muscles ready to shoot forward to strike the blow. As soon as the animal slowly turned to the side, Midoriya left. The movement was fast and precise. The spear advanced with all its strength, heading true to the point where the animal had the heart, passing it from side to side. As soon as he was shot, the animal screamed, trying to throw away the green-haired boy, before collapsing to the ground lifeless. The animal's scream made the other specimen he had arrived with a scale, who immediately noticed what had happened and tried to charge Midoriya with force to take revenge on his companion. Midoriya managed to notice the incoming blow in time due to the noise of the animal's clogs and jumped into the air dodging the incoming blow, but due to the sudden attack he could not recover the spear still skewered in the heart of the dead animal. Sheet. I don't have a gun, I have to find a way to counter it, even if I'm forced to fight with my bare hands. Midoriya thought in a panic. The animal did not give him even a second of respite as it continued to attack him and forced Midoriya to continuously dodge his charges without being able to study a plan to counterattack. However, Midoriya exploited the identical attacks that the animal launched with his head down in anger. Using his agility he lowered himself at the last moment, grabbing the horns of the beast with one arm and used the lever to rotate it and slam it against the ground. Before the animal could recover, Midoriya began to hit him with violence all over his body, reducing his death. The beast tried to escape but gave Midoriya time to pick up his spear, and threw it towards the running animal, piercing his brain and making him fall to the ground dead. Midoriya inhaled deeply, feeling the adrenaline slowly go down. His lungs burned slightly, but the heartbeat was stable, his body ready for any new challenge. The jungle around him was silent, as if he had observed everything with respect. Water ensured, food procured. My first real prey on the island. Now I can focus on building a routine and progress day by day. He murmured to himself between one breath and another as he caught his breath. He pulled the spear out of his brain and regained control of his body and mind, taking deep breaths. After calming down, he looked for leaves, branches and stones with which to light a fire and cook some of the meat of the animals he had just killed. He immediately found what he needed and began to set the fire there in the forest, creating an elevation through branches to be able to cook the meat without burning it. While the fire took heat and grew, Midoriya used the spear to cut the meat and prepare it to put on the fire to be able to eat. After about an hour, he had managed to cook some meat and had created all small pieces of meat that could be transported to his shelter so that he could also have food rations for the following days. With this meat I could be fine for at least 3 days, he thought before starting to eat the first pieces of meat he had cooked. The first bite was a liberation given the feeling he had since morning, having been more than one whole day without eating. The taste was not the best. It seemed to be eating small pieces of aluminum foil, but Midoriya was so hungry that even that food with that bad smell was fine. After recovering thanks to the meal made, Midoriya began to return to his temporary shelter with his newly obtained food rations and his new spear. By now the sun was setting and even the second day on the island was now passing. Back at his shelter he did the same routine as the night before, with a broken sleep and always alert in case of danger. All for one, Kurojiiri and Shigaraki also observed this second day, both surprised and proud of the improvements Midoriya was having. The days passed quickly without too many difficulties, and Midoriya Izuku had now spent 21 days on that island. His body was starting to suffer from the bad food and the little water he had been taking for 3 weeks now. He didn't encounter many difficulties, but his body was beginning to rebel. His sleep had been too weak and you could see it from his eyes with giant dark circles underneath. The food was not the best and it was having negative consequences on the body of the green-haired young man, who was increasingly struggling to move with agility and was losing some of his physical and mental strength. I can't give up. There are only 9 days left. Despite the difficulties I will have to face, I will continue to fight until the end. And I will finally be able to become strong. Midoriya thought, trying to convince himself to continue fighting. Slowly he got up. In those days he had found a new refuge, a cave behind a series of trees and rocks. He had managed to set up the floor with leaves as a bed and branches so as not to notice the entrance to the cave. Although it was better than his previous shelter, sleep was very difficult because of the hard rock on which he had to rest. Midoriya began to leave the cave, ready to face the 22nd day on that island. Midoriya felt strange sensations as if something would happen that day. Rushing those thoughts out of his head, he went to carry out his usual daily routine. Immediately started to the stream to drink some water and stock up for the day. When he got there he seemed calm as usual and crouched down and began to collect water in his container of waxy leaves, and he drank it, then took more and took it with him in case he needed to drink again. And he prepared to go hunting some animals to provide food, but due to his conditions and the efforts faced, his senses had slowly lost effectiveness and he didn't notice the 2 criminals he had seen the first day spying on him, waiting for the moment to attack him. Unknowing, Midoriya continued his routine and followed in the steps he saw on the ground, until he arrived at a place on the island that he had never reached before, and in front of him he found a bigger search than normal. Great. It's the first time I've found one. Let's hope his meat is better than the usual animals I've hunted these days, he muttered to himself. He waited for the moment when the deer bent down to eat some leaves so he could attack him. He prepared himself like a predator, and as soon as the deer began to eat, he attacked him by hitting him on the side but failing to hit a vital blow. Sheet. I've been slow, I'm losing my speed. I'll have to work harder to kill him, the green-haired boy thought in his head before giving the next blow. The deer continued to fight, trying to save himself, but Midoriya's attacks did not stop even for a second and did not give him time to escape. He tried to run away but was grabbed from above by the boy as if he were a predator. Midoriya's gaze was empty, focused only on survival because of hunger and fatigue, and he jumped on the deer, starting to skewer the whole body of the animal with his spear until he heard the deer exhale his last breath. I did it. Now all I have to do is skin this deer and get some pieces of meat and cook them for me, he muttered to himself. But he was pulled out of his thoughts by a sound of footsteps behind him. He turned around just to see an arrow shooting in his direction. He managed to dodge it by stride, being hit on the side, opening a not very deep cut. He looked up and noticed that they were the 2 criminals he had seen when he arrived on the island. Sheet. They were following me. My senses are no longer as active as they were at the beginning. I didn't notice. Boy, what are you doing here? It's a dangerous place for you here. How about playing a little with us? Said the criminal with the long arm because of the unstable quirk. Midoriya was panicked and tried to study an escape plan, but with the fatigue he couldn't find an escape route. There was a laugh from the criminals in noticing his gaze looking for an escape route, and this time it was the criminal with the axe instead of his arm. Boy, you can't run away, and you're inferior. You have no chance against us. It would be better if you gave up and let yourself be killed without problems, he said with a sadistic smile at the thought of killing the boy in front of him. Don't make me laugh. You're just two abandoned criminals. If I let you defeat me, I wouldn't be worthy of my mission. Midoriya uttered these words to try to provoke them and make them lose their temper. And it worked. Of two, they began to attack with check fury. Midoriya managed to dodge their blows with difficulty due to the numerical inferiority. He came attacks from the right and left. He tried to study his opponents, trying to figure out who was the weakest and most affordable to defeat first. And after a while he realized that his goal had to be to deal with the criminal with an unnaturally long arm, since despite having a longer range of action his attacks were slower, and before portraying the arm he lost a lot of time. With this awareness he tried to calm down and waited for the right moment. While the two continued to attack him, he managed to find a glimmer. The axe retreated and the criminal tried to catch his breath, and in the meantime his partner continued to attack, but at that moment Midoriya had to focus only on one of the two opponents and took advantage of the slowness of the long-armed criminal to grab him and throw him towards a tree and attack him with the spear, hitting his heart and ending his life. However, in making this move he forgot for a moment about the other criminal who, in the rage of the killing of his friend, charged Midoriya with his head down, taking advantage of his momentary distraction. Midoriya turned around, but it was too late. He only managed to prevent the criminal's axe from hitting him in a vital point and was hit on his side, opening a slit and losing his spear from his hands. The green-haired boy began to feel pain all over his left side and noticed the blood that kept coming out of him. Sheet. I was too slow, so I'll end up dying. The criminal didn't give him even a second of pause, and Midoriya was cornered with his back to a tree with his agility and speed that no longer allowed him to dodge his enemy's attacks. The criminal, now convinced of victory, charged an axe blow to behead the boy, but when he hit Midoriya, somehow with the last glimmer of pride he pushed the axe against the tree, and due to the force of the attack the axe froze and gave the green-haired boy time to take back his spear and hit the criminal in the neck. Midoriya saw the criminal bring his hands to his neck, dying trying to get air, but it was all useless. Slowly blood gushed from his neck and his breath left his body, leaving him lifeless, with an agonizing death. Midoriya pulled the spear out of the criminal's neck, staggering because of the wound. I have to find something to stop the wound and not bleed to death. Midoriya exhaled these words with difficulty because of the blood she was losing. The only way is this, he thought, and decided to tear a piece of his shirt by putting it between his teeth, preparing for the pain. He lit the fire and burned a piece of wood to be able to medicate and stop the bleeding. He took courage and told himself that that was the only way to survive at that moment. And he placed the hot wood on the wound, clenched his teeth as hard as he could while he felt the pain cross his whole body. He had the feeling that he was being pierced by 1,000 knives all over his body. When he finally noticed that the wound had stopped bleeding, he removed the wood, with tears in his eyes and his hands trembling with pain. He tried to get back on his feet with difficulty, and went to cut some meat from the deer and started to return to the cave. As soon as he arrived in the cave, he felt himself collapse and threw himself on his bed made of leaves and let himself go, and as soon as he leaned back he heard his senses go away and he fainted. Shigaraki, behind the screen, seeing all that suffering and Midoriya's body giving way unconscious, felt the anxiety tighten his chest. "Master, let's make him go home. So he risks dying," he shouted, clenching his fists. Izuku gave it his all. He passed the test, didn't he? All for one remained motionless, his smile barely hinted at. "Tamura, calm down," he said in a low and controlled voice. Going him back now would be a defeat for him. He would never accept his power if he didn't earn it to the end. He turned slightly towards the screen and continued, "Trust him. If he wants to be worthy of my will, and to join us, he will have to overcome all this." Shigaraki clenched his teeth, torn, then looked down. He reluctantly accepted his master's words and returned to stare at the screen, where Midoriya lay fainted, without strength. A day passed and Midoriya still showed no signs of recovering. His body became hotter and hotter despite the wound had been cauterized and showed no sign of infection. The open wound made him fever, his breathing was irregular and his muscles trembled. Midoriya woke up in his mind. He didn't understand where he was and how much time had passed out of his head when he heard a familiar voice. Midoriya, Izuku. What are you doing? Are you giving up? Midoriya turned around and saw the figure covered by the green cloak and the mask. Oh, Green Shadow? Where are they? Why am I here? Sloon with the questions. What's the last thing you remember? The man asked. I remember that I had fought those criminals. Then I went back to the cave and then everything went black. You fainted, boy. You haven't woken up for 3 days now, your body is giving up. It all depends on your mind. So I'm failing the test, even when I'm having a chance I'm failing. I'll be alone forever and this is my destiny. Midoriya was suddenly stopped by a snap and a burn on the cheek. The green shadow had hit him to make him come back to himself. What is all this pessimism? I thought you had overcome it. You still have a chance, you are not dead. Wake up and finish these days of survival. Remember that now you are strong, you are no longer the child you used to be. Midoriya was surprised by those words and couldn't get his voice out of shame of being back like before and losing control of his emotions. Come on, boy, do you want to end it here and not fulfill your future? The man asked him, trying to make the boy regain his trust. And no, not at all. Then he stopped for a moment and remembered the words of the last time they had seen each other and of the figure that had stood next to the green shadow before disappearing, and began with the ranged questions. Sorry, I wanted to ask you the last time you talked to me about the future and that I will have 2 choices. What did it mean? And then just before disappearing a figure stood by your side. Who was it? Young man, these questions will be answered in due time when the time comes. Until then, fight and improve as much as possible. See you, Midoriya, greeted the green shadow, leaving the boy still unanswered. Midoriya started but was interrupted because of the end of the dream. Midoriya won up. The first sign was not the sight but the pain. A dull and constant pain that throbbed on his left side, accompanied by the sensation of a suffocating heat that enveloped his entire body. Midoriya tried to inhale deeply but the air entered the lungs, burning with difficulty. Then slowly he tried to open his eyes and saw everything cloudy. Escaped from his dry lips as he tried to move, but the body responded with a violent pang that forced him to stop. The world around him turned slowly. The memory returned to the dream and remembered what had happened in fragments. 3 days. I fainted for 3 days, he thought as he squeezed damp leaves between his fingers. Midoriya swallowed with difficulty, his throat was dry and his head throbbed. And a thought hit his mind, I have a fever. The body is trying to react. He turned his head with difficulty to look at the situation of his wound. He saw that it was blackened, but at least it was not bleeding. Then he breathed and muttered to himself in a low voice, I'm healing. But the challenge is not over yet. It took him hours, maybe a whole day, just to be able to sit down. Every movement was a struggle, but Midoriya didn't force the body. He had learned. He listened to the signals, he measured the energies. He managed to drink a few sips of water left in the container of leaves. The liquid went down like fire, but it brought back a minimum of lucidity. Midoriya closed her eyes for a moment, and breathed, opening them again a moment later with a determined look. I won't give up now. Not after everything I've faced. Shigaraki observed, ecstatic and happy that his friend had recovered after he had stayed for 3 days with the anxiety that Midoriya would die and not make it. You did it, Izuku. I'm proud of you, he whispered so softly that only All for One could hear it. Scene Tamura. I told you to be calm and trust him. Now let's see how he will cope with these last days, said All for One with a mixed tone between disturbing and intrigued. The following days for Midoriya were made entirely of survival only. He moved little but with intelligence, he drank often, even just small sips. He ate minimal portions of meat he had kept, forcing himself to eat even when the body refused the food. The fever went up and down in waves, leaving him sometimes trembling, sometimes completely without strength. In those moments he remained motionless, breathing slowly, keeping his mind clear. He stopped hunting large animals, focused on small prey and insects by preparing simple traps. He came out of the cave only when it was strictly necessary. He made slower and more precise movements, but above all only when it was necessary. In the last 3 days he even managed to return to the stream without any collapse. He threw cold water on his face that almost hurt, but he brought him back completely to himself. The 30th day came without ceremony. Midoriya stood up slowly, looking up at the trees. I resisted. Until the end. I did it, he said softly with pride to himself. Midoriya won up. The first sign was not the sight but the pain. A dull and constant pain that throbbed on his left side, accompanied by the sensation of a suffocating heat that enveloped his entire body. Midoriya tried to inhale deeply, but the air entered the lungs, burning with difficulty. Then slowly he tried to open his eyes and saw everything cloudy. Escaped from his dry lips as he tried to move, but the body responded with a violent pang that forced him to stop. The world around him turned slowly. The memory returned to the dream and remembered what had happened in fragments. 3 days. I fainted for 3 days, he thought as he squeezed damp leaves between his fingers. Midoriya swallowed with difficulty, his throat was dry and his head throbbed. And a thought hit his mind, I have a fever. The body is trying to react. He turned his head with difficulty to look at the situation of his wound. He saw that it was blackened, but at least it was not bleeding. Then he breathed and muttered to himself in a low voice, I'm healing. But the challenge is not over yet. It took him hours, maybe a whole day, just to be able to sit down. Every movement was a struggle, but Midoriya didn't force the body. He had learned. He listened to the signals, he measured the energies. He managed to drink a few sips of water left in the container of leaves. The liquid went down like fire, but it brought back a minimum of lucidity. Midoriya closed her eyes for a moment, and breathed, opening them again a moment later with a determined look. I won't give up now. Not after everything I've faced. Shigaraki observed, ecstatic and happy that his friend had recovered after he had stayed for 3 days with the anxiety that Midoriya would die and not make it. You did it, Izuku. I'm proud of you, he whispered so softly that only All for One could hear it. Scene Tamura. I told you to be calm and trust him. Now let's see how he will cope with these last days, said All for One with a mixed tone between disturbing and intrigued. The following days for Midoriya were made entirely of survival only. He moved little, but with intelligence. He drank often, even just small sips. He ate minimal portions of meat he had kept, forcing himself to eat even when the body refused the food. The fever went up and down in waves, leaving him sometimes trembling, sometimes completely without strength. In those moments he remained motionless, breathing slowly, keeping his mind clear. He stopped hunting large animals, focused on small prey and insects by preparing simple traps. He came out of the cave only when it was strictly necessary. He made slower and more precise movements, but above all only when it was necessary. In the last 3 days he even managed to return to the stream without any collapse. He threw cold water on his face that almost hurt, but he brought him back completely to himself. The 30th day came without ceremony. Midoriya stood up slowly, looking up at the trees. I resisted. Until the end. I did it, he said softly with pride to himself. All for One. Shigaraki and Kurogiri looked at the screen, all three with a smile. Kurogiri. You can go and take him back, he passed the test, said All for One. Okay, master. Kurogiri replied and created a warp on the island to recover the green-haired young man. Shigaraki observed everything, happy and proud for his friend. Without any warning, in front of Midoriya, Kurogiri's warp opened. The air around distorted. Midoriya watched him for a moment with his heart beating slowly but decisively. He felt no surprise but only awareness, and with a slow but decisive step he crossed the warp and the world changed in the blink of an eye. When he opened his eyes again, the suffocating heat and the humidity of the jungle had disappeared. The air was cold, clean, sterile. The floor under the feet was smooth, solid. The artificial lights illuminated the room with a white and constant hue. Midoriya staggered, her legs giving way almost immediately, as if her body, finally free from the need to survive, had decided to claim altogether the price to pay. But before he could fall, a hand grabbed him by the shoulder. Be careful, was Kurogiri. Midoriya took a deep breath, feeling her lungs fill with air effortlessly for the first time in 30 days. The body trembled, but remained standing. In front of him were All for One and Shigaraki. Shigaraki was the first to move. Izuku. His voice came out lower than usual, restrained. For a moment he seemed to want to run towards him, then he stopped, as if he was afraid to touch him and make him collapse. Midoriya looked up, his face was hollowed out, marked by scratches, fresh and old scars. The eyes were sunken, surrounded by dark circles. The disheveled, dirty hair, longer than Shigaraki remembered. Yet those eyes were different. They were present and safe. "Tamura," said Midoriya with a hoarse but stable voice. "Sorry if I made you worry." Shigaraki clenched his teeth. Idiot," he murmured, but the trembling in his voice betrayed him. "You're almost dead, you know that, right?" Midoriya nodded slowly. "Yes." All for One watched the scene in silence. There was no need for words. He analyzed every detail: posture, breathing, micromovements. The way Midoriya remained standing even though the body was clearly exhausted. After a few seconds he spoke. 30 days without quirk or help. In a hostile environment while you were hurt and sick. He stepped forward and continued, "Yet you are here." "I did what I had to do," he simply replied. All for One nodded. "You didn't survive because you were the strongest, but because you learned when to stop, when to wait and when to hit. You accepted fear without being SLV to it." He paused briefly and finished the speech. "This makes you worthy." Shigaraki no longer looked at Midoriya as a little boy who needed help, but rather as someone who had gone through hell and had walked back. Kurogiri approached again. "Your body needs immediate care. Adequate nutrition." Midoriya nodded, finally feeling the tiredness getting heavy as lead. "It's okay," he said. Then before anyone could take it away he added, "But before going to sleep I would like to enjoy this feeling for a while longer. The feeling of having made it." For a moment there was silence in the room, broken only by a small laugh from All for One. "It's okay, young man." A week had passed since Midoriya's return from the island of Kurashima. "Dr. Garaki, how is the boy's recovery progressing?" All for One asked, surprising the doctor behind him. "Oh, master, I didn't expect you to be here already," replied the Garaki, fixing his glasses. "The boy is doing well. He's starting to eat again. Has now completely regenerated. He will probably have a small scar left. Can I do something for you, master?" The doctor replied. All for One waited, channeling the doctor's words, and calmly replied, "Very well, doctor. I would like to talk to the boy. Then I would like to know if you think your body is ready to receive the quirk." "Master, the boy's body has recovered in a surprising way. I'm sure he could receive it right now too," the doctor replied in a firm and confident voice. All for One under his mask he gave a disturbing smile and spoke, "Great was what I hoped for. I want that after the boy receives the quirk you check all his parameters. I don't want unexpected things." "Certainly, master." "Then I'm going to the boy." "See you later, Dr. Garaki," he said, and then left the doctor behind and walked towards the green-haired young man. Midoriya had just finished having breakfast, and was looking at himself, noticing how his wound had already healed, leaving only a small scar, when he heard the door open with a metallic click and saw All for One enter. "Good morning, master. I didn't expect your visit," he said in surprise. "Good morning, young Midoriya. I'm here to finally give you the quirk for which you trained so much." He paused, waiting for the boy to answer. "Are really, master? Now I'll finally get my quirk. Will you tell me what it's about?" He answered, all in one breath, taken by happiness. All for One, noticing Midoriya's happiness, chuckled, a disturbing laugh, and answered the boy's questions. "Yes, young Midoriya, you will receive your quirk now. First I'll explain what it is and how it works. Then it's about the Abyssal Shade quirk. I don't think you've ever heard of it." "No, master. What is it about?" Midoriya asked, excited to know what his power will be about. "So, young Midoriya, this power allows you to generate, manipulate and merge with a living shadow." He paused and continued. "It is an ethereal and conscious manifestation that reacts to your emotions. The stronger your emotions are, the stronger your power will be. It can protect you. It can destroy. It can become part of your body or devour everything around you. Midoriya felt a shiver run all over his back and his heartbeat speed up when he heard those words. All for One continued to speak as he approached Midoriya. This quirk will not only make you strong. It will force the whole world to look at you. He paused again. He was already talking a few centimeters from the green-haired boy. Tell me, Midoriya Izuku, are you ready to no longer be ignored by the world and reveal the great mistake they made in treating you that way? He finished the sentence with a disturbing voice that would have chilled even the devil himself. Yes, master. I want to receive this quirk and prove to the world and society that they were wrong about me. I'm ready. Midoriya replied with confidence and determination. All for One did not wait for another answer and smiled under his mask. Perfect then, said the master's deep voice, calm as a funeral whisper. Don't move. All for One slowly raised his right hand, placing it on Midoriya's face. The contact was cold. For a moment nothing happened, then the world collapsed. A sudden pain exploded in Midoriya's head, as if something was digging inside him. A scream went up in his throat, but he remained blocked, suffocated by an oppressive pressure that squeezed his chest. The lights suddenly went out and Midoriya felt something enter. It was not a hot flow as he had imagined. It was cold, dense, viscous, like a shadow pouring into his soul. The legs gave way, but he was supported by All for One with an unnatural force. Midoriya's mind exploded in his memories. The voices of the bullies, the father who mistreated him, the humiliations and the fear. Everything he had buried in his mind was dragged to the surface. In rethinking these memories, the shadow replied. The walls of the room began to blacken. The shadows lengthened unnaturally, crawling on the floor and walls like living creatures. A black-green aura began to filter through Midoriya's body, pulsating to the rhythm of his heartbeat. Don't object. You have to accept this power. You have to make it yours, murmured All for One with his hands still on the boy's face. Midoriya clenched his teeth. The pain was hallucinating. Every nerve seemed to burn, but he decided to listen to his teacher and clinged to that darkness without rejecting it. A shapeless ethereal mass that twisted like liquid smoke poured out of Midoriya's body. For a moment it took the shape of claws, then tentacles, and finally retracted by adhering to the boy's back like a second skin. The lights came back. Midoriya fell to his knees, panting with sweat running down his forehead. The pain slowly attenuated, leaving behind a new feeling. The feeling of power. All for One withdrew his hand and observed the scene with obvious satisfaction, whispering softly, "Fascinating. It seems that this quirk has matched you perfectly." Midoriya slowly looked up, her pupils trembling. "Master, I feel the power flowing inside me. I feel powerful," he whispered. All for One smiled under the mask. "It's normal, young Midoriya. This power is very powerful. You'll train yourself to control it, but first think about resting, then we'll think about everything. See you young, try to get used to this new strength of yours." "Of course, master. I can't wait to be able to train myself to control this power." "Thank you for everything, master." The green-haired boy thanked his teacher as the latter walked through the door, leaving him alone in his room with his new power. All for One returned to Dr. Garaki, who was caught up in one of his experiments. "Doctor, the transfer was a success. The quirk seems to have matched perfectly with the boy. I want you to follow the boy tonight, marking every data. And let me know anything." "Certainly, master. Instead for the creations you had asked me for." "The Nomu?" Garaki replied. "Doctor, those can wait. We still have time before we have to create our own attack. Let's focus on this guy first. He could become the extra weapon in our favor." "Okay, master. I'll let you know anything tomorrow." Dr. Garaki was in front of the monitors checking Midoriya in his sleep. He was lying on the bed. His breathing was slow but deep, and his body that had collapsed into a sleep after the tiredness of having received the strangeness. He was covered with cables and sensors on his chest, arms, and head. The monitors emitted regular acoustic signals. All too regular. Dr. Garaki stared at the data monitors with an expression that almost never showed surprise. "Unbelievable," he murmured, approaching one of the monitors. "The cell pressure stabilized in less than 3 minutes. The rejection is 0". He quickly typed on a keyboard, scrolling through graphs and vital parameters. The quirk has been integrated as if it had always been there, he said to himself in a hesitant and surprised voice. Then he looked at other data more and more surprised. I absolutely have to let the master know all this. And with that thought he continued to control the boy all night long. So doctor, why did you make me come here urgently? Did something happen to the boy last night? All for One asked in a calm voice. Master, the quirk. It seems that it was always meant for the boy. As if he had always been there, he spoke in a hesitant voice, trying to choose the words well to explain the situation to the master. All for One watched silently with his hands behind his back. Go ahead, doctor. Garaki swallowed and showed a piece of data on his tablet. Brain activity is not only increased, it is organized. The emotional waves are directly fueling the manifestation of the quirk. He took off his glasses, wiping them with a nervous gesture, and continued. It's as if this power was listening. All for One just tilted his head and said, You mean he responds to his psyche? No, master. It's as if he anticipated it. As if he had his own personality. As he answered, a shiver ran down Garaki's back. This quirk not only reacts to emotions, it amplifies them. He paused and then continued. If the boy feels anger, the shadow grows. While if he feels despair, the shadow becomes more complex. All for One smiled. What if he felt hatred? Garaki didn't answer immediately. After a few seconds at the end he said, So in that case, master, he could take control of the boy. Without proper training and preparation, the boy could be overwhelmed and not be able to control him. However, if he could control him even when he feels hatred, he could become an unimaginable power. All for One listened and then calmly and satisfied spoke. It's perfect. Keep monitoring it day and night for a week. Train it slowly to check the basics. All right, master. All for One tried to leave, then stopped on the threshold and spoke in a disturbing voice. Doctor. If he were to take control, don't intervene immediately. I'm curious to know how far the abyss can go. The doctor stood still, listening to his teacher's words. After that, in a week I will take care of him. I'll train him personally. So he'll have perfect control of the weirdness and no one will stop him. The door closed behind him with a metallic click. Garaki slowly returned to his room to look at the monitors, and for a moment he swore to see Midoriya's shadow moving alone against the wall. Midoriya opened her eyes slowly. The room was silent, illuminated by cold lights that reflected the white of the walls. For a moment all he perceived was a strange, unnatural sense. As if something from the inside was watching him. His heart was beating fast, his hip was pulling slightly even though the wound had healed. He slowly raised his arms and heard them answer, then something caught his attention. A black-green shadow on the wall pulsated slightly, before disappearing. So you woke up, said a voice behind him. Midoriya turned around and saw Dr. Garaki enter with the tablet in his hand and a cold and analytical look. Don't get up right away. The body has withstood the transfer, but you are not yet 100% stable, said the doctor. Midoriya remained motionless, observing his body. How do you feel? Garaki asked. Strange. As if something was under the skin. It doesn't hurt, but it moves. Midoriya replied with a trembling voice. Garaki nodded, typing something on the tablet. That's exactly what should happen. Your quirk is not like the others. You don't use it. You live it together. It responds to emotions, memories, even your deepest thoughts. Midoriya tightened the sheets. What if I lose control? If it happens, the shadow will take up space. Not immediately, but enough to make you understand where you are wrong. From today we will start a small training to be able to start controlling this power. It will be slow and accurate without any forcing. When you finish the complete training you will have to be able to command and better manage the quirk. Midoriya nodded, feeling a shiver run down his back as he noticed the shadow at his feet that moved slightly, as if he felt his own anxiety. First rule, Garaki continued, typing on the tablet and showing a light scheme on the white wall. The quirk reacts to emotions. Don't fight him. Don't repress anything. Observe him. Everything you feel now. Anger, fear, excitement. The shadow perceives it. If you lose control, so will the quirk. Midoriya inhaled deeply, having to accept that the quirk he had obtained was something alive, and that he would have to live with it. Garaki took a step back. Close your eyes and focus on your breathing. Inhale and exhale. Feel the heartbeat, the pressure of the feet on the floor. The shadow will react to your inner state. At first nothing happened. Then, when a memory of the past, bullying, humiliations, frustrations accumulated over the years, crossed Midoriya's mind, a small shadow column rose from the floor. It was thin, shaky, but real. Good, said Garaki, writing down the data on the tablet. See? He reacted to your emotion. You don't have to fear her. The shadow is the reflection of what you feel. The more you accept what you feel, the more you respond in an orderly manner. The more you resist, the more chaotic it becomes. Midoriya opened her eyes and observed the black-green filament. He trembled slightly, but seemed to be waiting for instructions. Try to move your hand, said Garaki. Don't force it, don't think about the result. Just focus your attention on the movement. With hesitation, Midoriya raised an arm. The shadow flickered and, for a moment, followed the movement of his limb like an imperfect echo. The boy inhaled, trying to stabilize his breath, and slowly the shadow adapted to the gesture. Perfect, said Garaki, without emotion but with a tone that betrayed a rare approval. You just established the first mental connection with the quirk. It's not a complete control, but it's enough for the first day. The rest of the session was similar. Observation, breathing, small controlled movements. Midoriya soon learned that even a sudden, negative thought made the shadow tremble. A positive emotion, like curiosity, made her pulsate softly. After several hours, Midoriya was exhausted. Sweat was dripping from his forehead and his arms hurt. But for the first time, the shadow moved consistently, following its minimal commands without shaking excessively. Garaki moved away slightly, writing down every data. I'm not training you to fight. I'm training you to talk to the quirk. First you will get to know it, then you will learn to use it. Rest now. We'll continue tomorrow. The foundations are important. If you fail today, you fail all the future control. Midoriya let himself fall on the floor, watching the shadow that slowly retreated near his feet. For a moment, he didn't feel afraid. Just a strange feeling of power, of connection. I'll make it, he whispered. The shadow barely flickered, as if to answer. The following days passed. Every day Midoriya grew and slowly improved his control. On the second day Midoriya woke up with the shadow gently enveloping him like a cloak. Garaki immediately welcomed him with the tablet. Today we will work on emotional awareness, young Midoriya. You have to learn to perceive how every emotion influences the quirk. The exercise consisted of remembering memories of different emotional intensity: joy, anger, sadness, fear. Every memory made the shadow react. It dilated, flickered, throbbed. Midoriya learned to modulate his breathing and concentration to stabilize the shape of the shadow. At the end of the day, he was able to create small controlled sprawling appendages, without the shadow escaping completely. Garaki noted, stable progression, no loss of control, consistent response to emotions. On the third day, Garaki focused training on the connection between mind and movement. Midoriya had to move his fingers, arms and legs, and see the shadow replicate the movements. At first, the shadow was slow and hesitant, flickering and sometimes seemed to ignore the commands. Garaki corrected, don't just think about moving your body. Imagine that the shadow is an extension of you, a part of you. After hours of practice, Midoriya was able to move the shadow as an additional limb, sometimes even independently of his movements, creating small distortions in the air around him. Garaki on his computer noted, the synaptic link between psyche and quirk begins to develop. The fourth day he focused on shaping the shadow. Garaki took Midoriya to a larger room with scattered objects, balloons, chairs, even small obstacles. You have to learn to manipulate the quirk to interact with the environment without losing control of it. Garaki explained to him. Midoriya began experimenting with the creation of small shadow strings to grasp objects, small shadow hands to move chairs, or thin filaments to measure the distance between the walls. It was tiring, but the shadow responded better to his intentions. Garaki noted the data. Impressed and control, but emotional stress not yet tested. On the fifth day, Garaki decided it was time to test stability under emotional stress. Midoriya had to evoke painful and angry memories as he controlled the shadow. At first, the shadow shook violently, creating uncontrolled chaotic ropes that risked hitting the walls. Garaki stopped him and told him, "Breathe, accept the emotion, don't fight it. Let the shadow answer, but keep the guide." After several hours of attempts and pauses, Midoriya managed to summon the shadow even in states of moderate anger without losing complete control. Garaki noted, "Great initial emotional resilience. The next step will be to increase the intensity." The sixth day, the goal was the coordination between multiple movements and psyche. Midoriya had to simultaneously move his limbs and use the shadow to manipulate different objects at the same time. At first it failed. The shadow moved in random directions and the ropes intertwined. Garaki explained, "Divide your attention in two. The body reacts, the shadow obeys your intent. You have to treat it as an extension of yourself, not as an external force." After numerous repetitions, Midoriya managed to move the ropes while running or jumping, grabbing objects without losing control. Garaki noted, multiple control achieved. Evident increase in neuronal synchrony. The seventh day was dedicated to summarizing everything he had learned. Garaki put Midoriya in a completely dark room with only green lights highlighting the shadow. The exercise involved using the quirk to move, manipulate objects, and react to simulated emotional stimuli. Midoriya, initially hesitant, began to perceive the shadow as a true companion who reacted instinctively to his commands. Garaki, observing the data, noted with surprise, "The quirk shows limited autonomy, but perfectly synchronized with the psyche. Huge development potential." At the end of the day, Midoriya collapsed exhausted on the floor, but for the first time he smiled. The shadow gently retracted at his feet, as if he approved. Garaki closed the tablet and walked away. "But this is just the beginning. I taught you the basics to control the quirk. The master will take care of the rest. The important thing is that you understand that the shadow is alive, but you are the one to guide it." With this, he left the boy and went to his scientific studio where All for One was waiting for him. The room was immersed in a cold silence, interrupted only by the regular beep of the monitors. All for One stood in front of Garaki, his hands behind his back and his gaze hidden behind the mask, motionless like a disturbing statue. "Dr. Garaki," the master's deep voice began, "tell me, how is the boy? After a week of training, has he improved in controlling the quirk?" Garaki lifted the tablet, showing button graphics and lines that intertwined like veins of black-green light. "Master, the progress is remarkable," he said, his voice firm but veiled with a surprise that he tried to hold back. From the first day, the boy began to create a mental connection with the shadow. At first he trembled and reacted chaotically to emotions, but now he responds in an orderly and consistent way to most commands. All for One moved slowly through the room. The shadows on the walls seemed to bend slightly as he passed. Order. Consistent. Interesting. And under emotional stress? Anger, hatred, despair? Garaki shrugged his shoulders slightly, carefully choosing the words. "We simulated complex emotional states. When the boy feels intense emotions such as anger or pain, the shadow grows and gets complicated, but Midoriya manages to maintain control, albeit with difficulty. He has developed remarkable resilience, considering that he is only the first approach to the quirk." The master stopped in front of the screens and asked, "What about autonomy?" "Limited but synchronized. The shadow begins to react almost instinctively to the commands and sometimes anticipates the boy's intentions. If trained properly, the potential is enormous, master." Garaki replied, barely holding back a shiver. All for One took a step back. "What? Then the time has come," he said, his voice calm but full of attention that made the air freeze. "The boy has assimilated the basics thanks to your training, Dr. Garaki. Now it will be up to me to raise him to the next level. I want you to learn to dominate the abyss, to use it without hesitation, without limits. I want it to become the definitive threat I imagined." Garaki nodded. "I understand, master." All for one turned towards the exit. Perfect. Dr. Garaki, tell the guy who will train with me from tomorrow. I want to see how he will react when I push the quirk beyond all limits. Until he dominates the abyss. Thank you, Doctor, for your help. Now take care of the creation of the Nomu. The doctor stood still, watching the teacher disappear behind the door, his heart slightly tense. He knew that Midoriya was going to face something bigger than any training up to that point, and that only All for One could take him beyond his limits. In the abandoned bar of Kamino, the League of Villains had gathered for a meeting. Master, so when will we finally get into action? Shigaraki asked towards the TV screen. Tamura, the time has come. The entrance exams for the UA are just around the corner. There is now a week left until the start. And this year All Might will start teaching right there, and finally, he turned to Midoriya. Young Midoriya, by now you have become a weapon. You have trained hard to control your quirk, and now you have it completely under your control. Yes, Master. But I have a question. How do you know All Might will teach at UA? Asked the green-haired boy with curiosity, also followed by Shigaraki and Kurojairi. Oh guys, I have my little secrets. Remember one thing. I have eyes everywhere. The three nodded, realizing that All for One wouldn't tell much more. I want you to be ready. Tamura and Midoriya have been working hard lately. Get some rest for now. You have to be ready for when our time comes. Said All for One. Certainly. The two boys answered at the same time. Immediately after this answer, the TV screen turned off. You too, I'm going to sleep. Take advantage of these days to tell you what you did during the time you didn't see each other. Kurojairi said before teleporting out of the bar. After the villain of the fog left, Midoriya and Shigaraki followed his advice and told each other what they had done during the time they had not been together. Midoriya told about his training with All for One and how he had to learn to control his own quirk with hellish challenges. Shigaraki listened to everything with a smile mixed between happiness and pride and told the green-haired young man about the journeys he had to face with Kurojairi to look for criminals willing to join them in their cause to free the world from heroes. The boys laughed nostalgically at the thought of the years of fatigue they had to face. The two decided to put that moment aside and go play some games before going to sleep. After finishing playing with Tamura, Midoriya was in his room and had fallen asleep with one arm down his side and the other behind his head, breathing slow but slightly irregular. Every now and then his chest rose abruptly as if he were running even in his sleep. The shadow under him barely moved, a muffled black-green light pulsed barely visible if he didn't look carefully. And without warning the dream came. Midoriya was standing in the middle of an underground arena, reinforced concrete walls, illuminated by red emergency lights. The ground was marked by cracks and deep grooves, signs of previous battles. In front of him, All for One, who said calmly, "Don't hold back. Show me when you've grown up." Midoriya didn't answer, his gaze became cold. The shadow behind him exploded precisely. The darkness wrapped around his body, forming a complete shade armor that covered his entire body, like a second skin that followed every breath. All for One took a step forward. Too late. Abyss claws. Blade-sharp shadow tentacles emerged from the ground and splashed towards All for One. The shadows struck from a distance, splitting the air with an unnatural hiss. The concrete exploded in splinters while the claws stuck in the wall behind the master. All for One didn't move. He smiled. Well, but it's still not enough. Midoriya felt a shiver run down his back and the floor below him seemed to dissolve. In the blink of an eye, the underground arena dissolved like smoke. The cracked concrete and the red lights vanished, replaced by a bare room illuminated by a cold and intermittent light. His heart was still beating for the adrenaline, but his breathing was calm. Too calm. The lights went out suddenly. The green-haired boy didn't need to see them go out. He immediately reacted. Blackout field. A living fog expanded from the shadows, distorting the distances, confusing the senses, and amplifying the fear. Fight without seeing, said the voice of All for One. A sudden blow missed him by a breath. Midoriya disappeared to reappear behind the enemy thanks to the shadow projected by a broken column. Abyssal step. A small, precise and silent teleportation. Shadow strings snapped like whips, hitting quickly and unpredictably, always changing angles, each whipping left grooves in the ground. Phantom whip. The room had changed again. Now it was a maze of debris, corridors, and collapsed structures. Training drones dashed around him, throwing bullets. The metallic clang rumbled between the invisible walls of his mind. "Don't stop. If you fall, you die," echoed the master's voice. The shadow stretched forward, clinging to a collapsed building, threw itself into the void, swinging like a spider from one building to another, exploiting the shadows, covering impossible distances in a few seconds, landed on a roof, rolling, and started again. Umber's swing. The shots of the drones missed him by a breath. He landed on his feet and, taking advantage of Phantom Whip, he hit the drones with ropes from a distance, destroying them. After destroying them, the shadow behind him closed steadily and obediently. "Great job, boy. You're no longer the fragile kid. You're something much more interesting." All for one said with a pause between one sentence and another. Midoriya opened his eyes wide. The light of the room flickered, his heart beating hard but without panic as he felt the rain hitting the window of his room. The shadow at his feet retreated slowly, obedient. Midoriya got up to sit down, running a hand over his face. He felt his quirk present and calm. "Just a dream of my workouts to control the quirk," he murmured as the anxiety of the dream he had just lived slowly went away. Midoriya closed his eyes for a moment, a barely visible smile. "I'm ready." The shadow pulsated a single time in silent approval. While Midoriya woke up from his dream in a small apartment in Mizudafu on a rainy day, her mother, Inko Midoriya, was sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of tea in her hands. She hadn't noticed it, but she had long stopped noticing many things for a long time. It had been 4 years. 4 years since they had told her that her little Izuku had died. At first she screamed, cried until she had no voice, until she felt her lungs burn. She had begged the heroes, the police, anyone, "Look for him again. Please. My son can't be dead like that." For months she had really believed that it was only a matter of time before her son came home. Every sound of the door made her jump, every phone that rang made her tremble. She had left the phone on even at night. Every time in the hope that he would make himself heard. "Mom." That word kept resonating in her head. At first she slept in his room, on Izuku's bed. Squeezing the blanket to her chest, as if he could hold his heat, as if she could prevent him from disappearing altogether. Then sleep had decreased and she had started to sleep less until she almost never slept. Over time the world around her had started to move again, but she didn't. They had told her, "You have to accept it. You have to move on. He won't come back." And she nodded, always. But something inside her refused. Now, after 4 years, the pain that used to be a scream had now become a silent, heavy, and constant pain. Inko got up slowly and walked down the corridor until she arrived in front of a closed door and stopped there in front, her heart beating fast and her hand shaking as she opened that door. Izuku's room had remained identical. The All Might posters that filled the room, the notebooks with the notes of the heroes that covered the entire desk, the shoes well aligned, and the computer with the page of his favorite video open. The video of All Might. Every now and then she had tried to fix, to change something, but she had never succeeded. That room was supposed to stay like this until the return of her beloved Izuku. She sat on the bed staring at the window. "You're out there, right?" she whispered with a broken voice. She didn't cry like before, now the tears came slowly and silently. The hope that her son Izuku was still alive had become smaller and smaller, but she wasn't dead yet. She was just smaller and more fragile, but still there. Like a lit candle in an empty room, shaky but stubborn. Inko closed her eyes, tightening her hands on his lap. "It's okay like that too. Even if you don't come back right away. Even if you don't want to come back. I'll wait for you forever, my little Izuku," she murmured with a deep breath and a restrained sob. At the same time, about 3 kilometers to the northwest, Katsuki Bakugu was sitting in his room, his hands clenched into fists while sweat dripped from his forehead following the morning training. The sun barely filtered through the half-closed curtains, but he didn't care. Outside the window there was a world of weakness, and he was determined to never be part of it again. All that mattered was to become the best. The most feared. The most powerful. Books and notebooks were scattered everywhere, signs of a hectic but messy study, like his mind. He didn't study out of curiosity, he didn't study out of passion. He studied to annihilate anyone who dared to stand in front of him. His hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but from the sheer excitement of knowing that his time was coming. In a week and the UA entrance exam would be held. His thoughts shifted to Midoriya, the fragile boy he had considered a perfect target for years. That nothingness. Always crawling at my feet. A hopeless Deku, who thought he could become someone. That he killed himself because he was weak. Pathetic. The contempt was total, relentless. There was no room for remorse. There was no room for empathy. Midoriya was just a name, a shadow to be crushed in Bakugo's mind. Dismissing these thoughts with a cruel smile, he grabbed his fighting notebook and started training again. Explosions of his hands tore the air, sending paper shards and debris flying against the walls, without mercy, without any control over the destruction. Every blow was a statement. Anyone who dared to turn against him would be reduced to dust, physically or morally. He focused on the most fierce techniques, perfecting every movement, every shot. His arms trembled, but not from fatigue but from pure anger, from the euphoria of knowing that no one could stop him. "There's no one. Not now, never," he whispered through clenched teeth. His voice was a muffled growl, full of hatred and arrogance. Looking at his messy room, the posters of the heroes, the scattered sheets and the training tools, Bakugo smiled. Everything was half broken, half destroyed. Just like anyone who dared to challenge him. Perfection was not yet reached, but it was close. And there was no room for weak feelings. There was no room for remorse or forgiveness. Whoever challenges me will end up like Deku. The word was a threat, pronounced like a mantra. His hatred of the past fed every fiber of his body. Every muscle, every explosion, every thought was tense towards a single goal: to become the best, to become unstoppable. Bakugo stood up, breathing heavily, and looked out the window with an icy look. The world could continue to revolve around the weak, it could delude itself with hope, but he was ready. Ready to dominate. Ready to win. Ready to step on anyone who gets in his way. And if anyone had doubts, well, that he tried to stop him, he would have ended up like everyone else, a useless memory on his way to glory. All Might sat alone in the small apartment he used as a temporary base, his hands intertwined on his desk. The late afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, illuminating the dust suspended in the air. The silence was almost unnatural, yet comforting, a moment of pause before the storm that the entrance exams would bring. All Might's thoughts were turbulent again even after 4 years. His thoughts still returned to that day. To that little boy with green hair and eyes full of hope. Midoriya Izuku was his name. He was so fragile but determined. That day he had advised him to give up the dream of becoming a hero and becoming a police officer since he didn't have a quirk. He had done it to protect him. To prevent that boy from getting hurt, but now. His voice in his head resounded like a reproach. That day, because of me, that boy killed himself. All Might clenched his hands on his fists, feeling the weight in his chest. If only I had behaved differently. If only I had worked harder to understand that boy. Now maybe he would still be alive. I failed as a hero. The remorse was a tight, painful knot that never loosened. There was no possible redemption for that past. He just had to live with that remorse. He still remembered how he had reacted to that news when it was given by the news and his feelings of guilt for the death of that boy. He chased those thoughts out of his head and focused on why he was becoming a teacher at the UA, that is to find a student worthy of receiving his power, the one for all, and becoming his successor. His thought immediately fell on Mirio Togata, one of the big three, and also a student and pupil of his former friend and assistant Sir. Night-Eye Mirio had proven to be strong, brave but above all human, which made him the best suitor to become his successor. However, before deciding to give him that role, All Might was curious if in the students who would start the course for heroes after the entrance exam there was someone more worthy to become his heir. His heart was beating fast as he got up from the chair and walked towards the window, staring at the city below him. The year was about to start, the exams were imminent. And he would be there, ready to lead the boys. His task was not only to teach and look for his heir but also to protect, guide the next generations of heroes, but above all to prevent another fragile boy like that green-haired boy from meeting the same fate. At the same time, in a spacious villa with white walls and flashy elegant furniture reflecting a warm morning light, a girl with raven hair gathered in a perfect ponytail was in front of the mirror of her room, lost in her thoughts on the UA entrance exam. Momo knew that, thanks to her family, she would face a simpler test than other candidates. Yet that ease did not relieve the pressure she felt on her shoulders. She had to show that she deserved the job, that it was not just a product of the family's prestige. Every move, every decision would speak for her. A light knock on the door made her jump, tearing her out of her thoughts. "Momo, come down, that breakfast is ready," said her mother's warm and composed voice, an invitation to the real world after the storm of her thoughts. "I'll be right there, Mum." "I'm almost ready," Momo replied, trying to drive away the doubts and anxieties that twisted her stomach. Shortly after, her father also entered, with a firm step and watchful eyes. "Come on, love, come down when you're done, we'll wait for you downstairs," he said, with that balance between firmness and affection that was familiar to her. Momo nodded, biting her lip. "I'll be right there." The smile that responded to their eyes was warm, but inside her she felt the weight of expectations that weighed on her every gesture. As she finished preparing, she reflected on her parents. Her father, Renjiro Yaoyorozu, was proud of her, but her severity was legendary. Every mistake was punished with frustration, yet Momo knew that under that hardness there was a sincere desire that she would become the best. Her mother, Yaoyorozu, was sweeter and more understanding, always ready to guide her, to encourage her to use the quirk with ingenuity and heart. They had been together, in that combination of discipline and affection, to forge Momo's determination. Yet, despite everything, Momo felt the weight of confrontation with her own potential, the fear of not being enough. "I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to be just a name on their hit list," she thought, clenching her fists slightly. She prepared herself carefully, every precise gesture, as if the whole world was watching her. Then she went down the stairs. The floor creaked under her steps, reminding her how real the moment was. In the room, her parents were waiting for her with sincere smiles and eyes full of expectation. Momo there reciprocated with a firm look. The family warmth infused her with confidence, but the drive to prove herself, beyond support and prestige, made her heart beat faster. She took a deep breath, the scent of breakfast reached her nostrils, and at that moment she felt that, despite her fears and insecurities, she was ready. Not only for the exam, but to prove to herself and others that she deserved every opportunity and that she was not just a beautiful girl with a rich family. This was her family, her strength. And with that silent strength, Momo felt the determination to overcome any obstacle and emerge as someone worthy of being remembered. A week had passed since the meeting with the League of Villains and the dream he had had. That morning Midoriya was summoned again to the abandoned bar in Kamino for a meeting. When Midoriya arrived, Shigaraki was already there, leaning against the wall with a barely hinted smile, while Kurogiri stood near the door, motionless and silent. "So," All for One began with his calm but authoritative voice, "tomorrow there will be the UA entrance exam and you will have the opportunity to observe it." Midoriya clenched his fists, trying to control the anxiety that snaked inside him. Shigaraki watched him with curious eyes, as if he already knew that something great was about to happen. "Thanks to your power, young Midoriya. You and Tamura, you can be transported to the test site. And with Umbral Veil that creates a veil of darkness that absorbs light and sound. It will allow you to become practically two ghosts invisible to the naked eye. Kurogiri will take care of taking you there and recovering you at the end of the test." All for One continued. The fog villain nodded silently, his presence reassuring and disturbing at the same time. Midoriya felt a mixture of excitement and tension growing in his stomach. "Master, will it be safe?" he managed to ask, his voice barely perceptible. "Don't worry," said All for One, with a smile that didn't let emotion leak. "You will be invisible to the eyes of the participants. The world of heroes must not yet know about your presence. But what you will see will teach you a lot. And it will make you understand how fragile their strength is and to know more about future heroes." Shigaraki moved slightly, excited, as if he couldn't wait to observe the scene. Midoriya concentrated, feeling the familiarity of his shadow pulsating under him, ready to obey every command. Tomorrow, concluded All for One, it won't just be a test for the U.A guys. It will be a test for you too. Remember that everything you learn will serve at the right time. Then the screen went out, leaving them with less than a day before the UA exam. Shigaraki tilted his head, a crooked smile that widened on his face. Interesting, he murmured with a tone full of expectation. That night Midoriya stayed awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling of his room. The shadow under him was motionless, but alive, as if he were listening with him. Tomorrow he would have seen the UA. Tomorrow he would have observed the future heroes. Tomorrow he would have looked closely at the world that believed him dead. And with those thoughts he fell asleep, preparing for what awaited him for the next day. Midoriya woke up and calmly got out of bed. He began to get dressed and washed his face and teeth. When he was ready, he left his room and headed toward the bar, prepared for the meeting before leaving to observe the UA entrance exams. Upon arriving at the bar, he saw Shigaraki and Kurojairi waiting for him. He greeted them with a good morning, which they returned. Young Midoriya, there you are. Dr. Garaki and I have prepared villain costumes for you and Tamura, so you won't be recognized in case something goes wrong, All for One said calmly from behind the screen. Izuku will have disguises made just for us. Aren't you excited? Shigaraki said, ecstatic at the idea of having a costume of his own. Yes, Tamura, replied the green-haired boy, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Kurojairi observed the exchange between the two and waited for them to calm down before revealing the costumes their master had prepared. Tamura, Midoriya, here are your costumes. They're in these boxes. Go change and come back. We still have time before the UA exam begins, Kurojairi said, handing 2 boxes to the boys. Okay, the 2 boys replied in unison and went to change, separating without saying a word. Midoriya entered a side room of the bar, closing the door behind him. The room was silent, illuminated only by a cold light that fell from above, making the walls look even more bare. He put the box on the table and stared at it for a few seconds, his heart beating slightly faster than usual. Then he opened it. Inside there was the costume. The first piece he noticed was the cloak, folded with care. It was black, completely black, as if it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. There were no symbols, seams, or distinctive signs. Only darkness. Underneath it lay the tight-fitting suit, also black, crossed by thin bright green lines, irregular, similar to luminous cracks under a solid surface. When he put on the suit, it adhered to his body in an unnatural way, as if it had been created especially for him. It was neither stiff nor uncomfortable. On the contrary, it followed his every movement with absolute precision. The green veins seemed to pulsate to the rhythm of his breath as if the costume were alive. Then he took the cloak and put it on his shoulders. The last object in the box was the mask. It was smooth, without features and only slits for the eyes and mouth and nose. When Midoriya wore it, the world seemed to get darker, but at the same time sharper. 2 unnatural green eyes lit up in the reflection before him, splitting the darkness like blades. With one last look at his reflection, he turned and left the room, ready to join the others and see Tamura's costume. Midoriya crossed the corridor and returned to the main area of the bar. The first to turn around was Kurojairi, followed shortly by Shigaraki. Midoriya stopped, noticing Shigaraki's costume. It was different, and in a way, it irritated him. It lacked the silent elegance of his own, as well as that sense of control. It was chaotic, irregular, as if it had been created for the sole purpose of destruction. Shigaraki's body was wrapped in a dark suit, worn and frayed in some places, with dull blue inserts that looked almost faded. But what drew the most attention, and unsettled the green-haired boy the most, were the hands. They were everywhere, on his face, shoulders, arms, chest, and neck, as if they were desperately trying to cling to him. Shigaraki's face was almost completely hidden, except for his red, restless eyes shining through the bony fingers. So? Not bad, right? Tamura asked with a crooked smile. Midoriya nodded slowly. It suits you well, he replied, trying to hide the discomfort stirred by his friend's costume, something he couldn't quite put into words. Very interesting. All for One's voice filled the room, calm and satisfied. Tamura, your costume reflects your nature perfectly, anger, destruction, exactly what the world will come to expect from you. Shigaraki chuckled, bringing a hand to his neck. Then All for One turned his attention to Midoriya. Young Midoriya, your costume conceals your identity and turns your presence into absence. A villain who cannot be recognized is a villain who can strike anytime, anywhere. In addition, the mask you're wearing can alter your voice by pressing the button on its side, ensuring that no one will ever recognize you, he added in a pleased, almost smug tone. Midoriya's green eyes shone faintly. Shigaraki glanced at Izuku, clenching his fingers. Hey, Izuku, are you ready? Let's go see how these heroes are doing, he said. Midoriya nodded, already preparing himself to study and visualize the possible futures of these aspiring heroes. Good luck, boys, observe carefully and analyze who might become a future threat. We'll speak again later, All for One said, just before the screen went dark. Get ready, both of you. You'll have to be careful not to get caught. It could be dangerous. Good luck, Kurojiiri added as he opened a portal leading to UA. Ready, friend? Shigaraki asked. I am. Are you? Midoriya replied, a faint smile forming beneath his mask, one that Shigaraki returned. With that, the two boys stepped through the portal, ready to observe the future heroes. As they crossed through, they found themselves standing on a rooftop overlooking the area where the test would take place. The air was crisp, and the distant noises of the city filtered weakly through the narrow streets and towering buildings below. Without wasting any time, Midoriya activated Umbra Veil. In an instant, their presence merged with the shadows of the rooftop. He and Shigaraki vanished from sight, becoming invisible spectators to what was about to unfold. They crouched low, carefully observing the courtyard beneath them. The silence was almost complete, broken only by the soft whisper of the wind and the steady rhythm of their heartbeats. They both knew that even the smallest movement, even the slightest sound, could reveal them. The test is about to begin, Midoriya murmured, his green eyes glowing faintly beneath the mask. Shigaraki gave a small nod, a thin smile curling across his lips, as the two prepared to witness the future of the world of heroes, unseen. Welcome to today's live performance, shouted the hero known as Present Mike, welcoming the students with overwhelming enthusiasm. Everyone say, hey. Present Mike cupped a hand to his ear, waiting for a response from the crowd. No one reacted. Awkward. Well, my candidate listeners, you seem a lot cooler than last year's group. All right, I guess you're saving your energy for the real challenges. I'm here to present the guidelines for your practical exam. Are you ready? Present Mike asked. Yes, he shouted himself, leaning forward and stretching his ear toward the audience. Silence. Among the students, some exchanged nervous glances, while others remained completely still, focused. One boy, however, scoffed loudly. How boring, Bakugo Katsuki muttered, arms crossed and his gaze burning with irritation. Stop talking already. Just let us in there. Small sparks crackled between his hands, drawing the attention of nearby candidates, who instinctively stepped back. Hey, that's dangerous, someone whispered. Bakugo shot them a sharp glare. What's wrong? Scared already? If you're not ready to destroy everything, you might as well go home. Present Mike cleared his throat, as if he were deliberately ignoring the tension. A boy in the front rows raised his hand, catching Present Mike's attention. Yes, Candidate 5-1-4-8? What exactly does the exam consist of? The boy asked. Let me get to that part, Present Mike said, pointing his thumb at the screen behind him. Up there, you'll see the details of the exam. In this test, we'll divide you into equal numbers across 8 different areas, called cities. Then we'll simulate a game. The screen flashed, and its contents changed, displaying 4 distinct images. 3 of them showed robots made of metal and painted green, while the 4th image was darkened. The robots were labeled 1-pointer, 2-pointer, and 3-pointer, ordered by size. The 1-pointer was the smallest, while the 3-pointer was the largest. The darkened image, however, was mysteriously marked with a. Each area is filled with these 3 types of fake villains you see behind me, Present Mike explained. Each one awards points based on its difficulty, and you'll be rewarded according to which ones you destroy. Use your quirks to neutralize these fake villains. Earn as many points as possible, young candidates. A candidate jumped up, his movements stiff and mechanical, almost like those of a robot. He was tall, with short indigo hair and glasses. From the uniform he was wearing, it was clear that he attended a prestigious middle school. "Excuse me, sir. May I ask a question?" he said loudly. It appears that there are 4 varieties of fake villains shown on the screen behind you. Such a clear mistake, if that is indeed what this is highly inappropriate and shameful for UA, the finest hero academy in Japan. We are all here today in the hope of becoming model heroes. Is this truly how this school operates? The boy shouted, his posture rigid and indignant. Bakugu snorted upon hearing him. This one talks too much. Well then, Candidate 7-1-1-1, to answer your question. Present Mike replied energetically. The 4th variant of fake villains earns you 0 points. It's simply an obstacle. There is only one in each area. The boy straightened immediately. A stage gimmick meant to be avoided. Understood. Thank you, sir. I apologize for the interruption. That's all from me. Present Mike shouted. I'll leave you with our iconic school motto, my listeners. Go beyond. Plus ultra. With that, everyone stood up from their seats and began heading toward the areas where they were assigned to take the test. Bakugu moved forward without looking around, a fierce smile etched across his face. I'll win, he muttered. Anyone who gets in my way will be blown away. The start signal sounded sharp, cutting through the air like a gunshot. The doors of the test zones opened, and the candidates poured into the artificial cities. Screams, frantic footsteps, quirks activated without control, chaos took shape within seconds. From the top of the roof, shrouded by umbra veil, Midoriya and Shigaraki watched. Ah, Shigaraki murmured, leaning slightly forward. Look at how they run. They look like insects when you turn on the light. Midoriya didn't answer. His green eyes observed every movement, every trajectory, with maniacal focus. The metallic sound of the first robots being destroyed echoed through the buildings. See that boy near that group of robots? He isn't very strong, but his intelligence allows him to anticipate situations and adapt his strategy on the fly, Midoriya said, pointing at a boy with indigo hair and glasses. Shigaraki tilted his head and scrutinized the boy Midoriya indicated. Too rigid, he muttered. But he could be a perfect executor of orders. In a group, he could be very dangerous. The two continued to observe, attentive to even the slightest change, while the exam went on without pause. Robots moved and scattered through the streets as the candidates desperately tried to accumulate points. From beneath the mask, Midoriya followed every movement with obsessive attention, recording reaction times and quirks for each candidate. Too slow, that one is too impulsive. In a real fight, they'd die immediately, he thought. Then a sudden blast made him flinch. An explosion far more violent than the others tore through the air. A 3-point robot was blown apart, hurled into a building as if it were made of paper. When Midoriya searched for who had done it, he felt something tighten around his chest. Blonde hair, fierce eyes, and a smile full of arrogance and anger. Bakugu Katsuki, his greatest childhood bully. Bakugu advanced without hesitation, using explosions as propulsion, destroying everything in his path. There was no strategy, only raw, devastating power. And yet, somehow it worked. Oh! Shigaraki laughed. That one's interesting, isn't he, Izuku? Midoriya nodded. Yeah, he's strong, he said, his voice more distant than usual, a change Shigaraki noticed immediately. You know him? Shigaraki asked, tilting his head toward the green-haired boy. Who is he? Yes, all too well. Midoriya replied. He was the main bully of my childhood. The one who covered my body in scars and turned my life into hell. His voice was heavy with bitterness. Oh, so that's the boy. Shigaraki said quietly. Midoriya nodded without speaking, continuing to observe Bakugo. Bakugo laughed as he fought, shouting at the robots as if they were inferior beings. To him, the world itself seemed like nothing more than an obstacle to be crushed beneath his feet. But as Midoriya watched him from the shadows, Bakugo suddenly stopped and turned around. His eyes scanned the area, narrowing slightly, as if he had sensed something. But he saw nothing. "TSK? I feel like I'm being watched." "F, all of you," he snarled, his hands crackling with explosions as he resumed attacking anything in front of him. "Keep shining, Bakugo. The brighter you are, the deeper the shadow will be when you fall," Midoriya whispered, his voice so cold it could make anyone shiver. "Oh Izuku, that's exactly how I effing like you." Shigaraki grinned. Midoriya shifted his attention away from Bakugo and focused on the other candidates, searching for those worthy of being analyzed. "Tamura, look over there," he said, pointing at a pink-haired girl whose quirk appeared to produce acid. "She's fast and agile. Her movements aren't perfect, but her ability to move quickly between obstacles makes her unpredictable. In a real fight, she could be a problem." Shigaraki tilted his head, followed the girl's movements with his eyes, and nodded softly. Then Midoriya noticed another candidate, a dark-eyed boy with the head of an eagle, possessing a quirk focused on shadow manipulation. "Interesting. His control over shadows is similar to my quirk. He's not the most aggressive, but with proper strategy he could dominate an entire area. He's a candidate worth keeping an eye on." Shigaraki smiled and nodded in agreement. As the trial progressed, Midoriya and Shigaraki continued to comment on the other candidates. Midoriya watched every fight, every move, every decision, as if he were taking notes for a future plan. His coldness never wavered, and Shigaraki seemed almost fascinated by the green-haired boy's maniacal precision. "Well, Tamura," whispered Midoriya as the test approached its end, "we already have a clear picture of who could become a real threat. Some are unpredictable, others too direct. But everyone has weaknesses to exploit." Shigaraki smiled, wearing his typically disturbing expression. "Yes, exactly, you're incredible, Izuku. You can understand everything without any problem." The noise of the falling robots, the screams of the candidates, and the general chaos filled the air. The exam was nearing its conclusion. Time passed quickly. The artificial streets were now littered with debris, smoke, and craters. The destroyed robots lay everywhere like useless carcasses, while the candidates, increasingly exhausted, continued to move, driven by adrenaline. Midoriya observed in silence, but his gaze was constantly moving. "They're slowing down," he murmured. "Fatigue is starting to show. Now you can see who has only strength and who has true mental endurance." Shigaraki crouched further on the edge of the roof. "This is the part where many break. I like this." A sudden roar ripped through the air. A massive metallic silhouette emerged between the buildings, shaking the ground with every step. The zero-pointer robot. Chaos erupted immediately. Some candidates froze on the spot, while others began to flee in panic. Screams, confused orders, quirks unleashed without control. "Oh!" Shigaraki smiled disturbingly. "That's new, look at how they run." Midoriya watched without any visible emotion. "It's a mental test. Those who run lose precious time, those who freeze are already defeated." He noticed a short boy with hair composed of grape-like spheres, tossing his adhesive spheres to slow down the robot, not to destroy it, but to buy a few seconds. "Coward, but intelligent," he commented. "Survival is also a form of strategy." Then his gaze shifted back to the bird-like boy, who kept his distance, avoiding direct light while using dark shadow cautiously. "He's holding back his quirk, afraid it might get out of control. A dangerous limitation." Shigaraki chuckled softly. "Yet it could be devastating if only he stopped holding back." Another explosion, more powerful than the others, immediately drew Midoriya's attention. Bakugo. He was attacking the giant robot without hesitation, throwing himself at it with an almost suicidal ferocity. "He's an idiot," Midoriya said coldly. "He's not earning points. He's just venting." Bakugo screamed, laughed, and struck the metal without fear, completely ignoring the true purpose of the exam. But look at his determination. Shigaraki commented. This is how monsters are born. Midoriya barely tightened his fingers. Or this is how they die. Further on, the boy with glasses ran, helping some candidates get up and guiding them out of the danger zone. Classic hero mentality. DSPLN, sacrifice. Predictable, said Midoriya. He will always be at the forefront. Finally, he saw a girl with brown hair and perpetually pink cheeks, standing still for a moment, watching the chaos. Her breathing was irregular, her hands shaking. Then she moved, not to attack, but to use the ground itself against the robot. Midoriya barely tilted his head. Interesting. She's thinking. It's not just instinct. Shigaraki snorted. Too much empathy. A flaw. The sirens began to wail. The test was ending. The lights changed, the robots deactivated one by one, and the gigantic zero-pointers stopped with a final roar. The candidates remained still, panting, covered in dust and sweat. And that's how it ends, said Shigaraki, stretching. It was a good game. Midoriya continued to observe for a few more seconds, memorizing faces, postures, and reactions at the end of the test. Some will become heroes, he finally said. Others will fail. And some could become problems in the future. Shigaraki smiled in an eerie way. I can't wait to clash with and destroy any of these guys. We've seen enough. Let's call Kurogyari and return to the bar, Midoriya concluded, and Shigaraki nodded. Below them, unaware of everything, the future heroes left the test area, convinced they had overcome something important. They did not know that they had already been studied. Marked. The air in front of Midoriya and Shigaraki slowly twisted, swallowing the shadows of the roof as Kurogyari's portal opened silently. A dark, quiet, unreal vortex. Without a word, the two crossed it. The bar reappeared around them as if they had never left. Soft lights, the smell of stale alcohol and smoke, and the heavy silence that seemed to permeate everything. Kurogyari was already there, waiting for them. Welcome back, he said in his muffled voice. The transfer went smoothly. Midoriya barely nodded. The mask was still on his face, his green eyes faintly shining in the darkness. Did you observe what you were asked? A calm, deep voice asked from behind the screen. Its presence filled the room without the need to shout, like an invisible weight pressing on the chest. Yes, Midoriya replied without hesitation. We've seen everything. Shigaraki let himself fall into a chair, spreading his arms. A noisy pack. But some stood out. Interesting. Tell me what you managed to understand, murmured All for One. Midoriya took a step forward. His voice was cold, controlled, almost clinical. The most relevant candidates are different, he began. Bakogu Katsuki. Quirk. Explosion. He can create explosions with the palms of his hands as a reaction to the nitroglycerin in his sweat. The more sweat he produces, the bigger the explosion. His mentality is aggressive, unstable, driven solely by ego. Shigaraki smiled crookedly. A rabid dog. Exactly, Midoriya continued. If properly provoked, he will be consumed by anger and his attacks will become easier to predict. All for One seemed to smile behind the screen as he spoke. Continue. A boy with glasses and indigo hair. Quirk. Engine. His legs are fast. His quirk forms motors on his calves, allowing him to accelerate as he runs, similar to a car or motorcycle. He follows the rules in a maniacal way. Then, All for One murmured. A girl with brown hair. Quirk. Zero gravity. She can nullify the gravitational pull on any object she touches. However, pushing beyond her limits seems to make her nauseous. Shigaraki snorted with a sadistic smile. That girl has too much empathy. She'll end up dead. A boy with the appearance of a bird, Midoriya continued. He has a dangerous quirk. Quirk. Dark shadow. A sentient shadow entity evoked from his body, acting as a powerful ally in combat. Strong, but limited by the fear of losing control. If he exceeds that threshold, it will be a serious problem. Great. You did well, murmured All for One. Rest, boys. You've observed enough today. Next time, you'll have to fight. With that, the screen turned off. Silence returned, swallowing the bar. Shigaraki approached Midoriya. Hey, Izuku. Tell me, replied the green-haired boy. Do you think Bakugo will recognize you? Midoriya slowly looked up and replied, No, he won't recognize me. He's too greedy for power to remember me. To him, I've always been invisible, just a toy to break. His voice was full of anger and hatred. Then when he falls by your hand, it will be even worse for him. Izuku, I'm going to sleep. I'm tired. See you later, said Shigaraki, stretching as he headed down the corridor to his room. See you later, Tamura, Midoriya replied. The two boys said goodbye and went to rest, preparing for the next challenges ahead.